Chapter 1545. Zifeng Association's Student Branch Conference Room. The wild maple rubbed the space between his eyebrows and leaned back on the sofa with a pained expression. He was one of the members of the Rainbow Seven Suns gang of Nine Paths and high school's Purple Maple Society. He was also the vice president. In the Purple Maple Gang, all the gang members' names must contain the word maple or a homophone of maple. This unwritten rule was said to have been set by the first leader of the gang, and because it was unique, it had been passed down. You let him in just like that? The current president, Moriyama Keed, looked at him in disbelief and said, "Haven't you never failed before? When people walk by the river, how can they not wet their shoes?" The wild group Maple also had a headache. He sighed. There was always a higher mountain. This time, Big Wild Tuan Keed had really experienced it. He thought that his skills in dice and poker were superb. Who would have thought that they would kick an iron plate this time? Even now, he still didn't understand how on earth Wang Ling had achieved such a godly technique. That was far more than an iron plate. The person he had encountered was simply an immortal. He cheated. How can it be cultivated? Wild Maple couldn't help but sigh. After confirming the final 5 members of the delegation, these 3 words were the words he repeated the most. But tell the truth. This time, he was thoroughly convinced by Wang Ling, even if Wang Ling hadn't fought him head-on. But rolling dice was a godly skill. Maple admitted that he had never seen such a thing in his life. If it wasn't for the fact that he still had to consider his relationship with the gang, he would have wanted to acknowledge him as his master on the spot. One should know when to quit while one is ahead. This was something Maple's family had instilled in him since he was young. Although their family ran a casino, and the wild group Maple grew up watching all kinds of gambling games and learned many tricks and unique skills. He was also more interested in researching all kinds of cheats and techniques to detect cheats. But in fact, the wild group Maple had never gambled with anyone. It was mainly because of the pressure from his family. The father of the wild group Maple started his business in this field, but he didn't want his son to be involved in this kind of thing. That was why he forced the wild group Maple to cultivate Sword Dao. Fortunately, the wild group Maple was quite talented in Sword Dao. It was just that Big Wild Maple felt that his parents didn't really understand what he wanted. After thinking for a long time, Big Wild Maple's brows relaxed. "I think it's better if we don't touch this person. Why did you suddenly think of this?" Moriyama Keed laughed. "Haven't you always wanted to run the family business, but Uncle and Annie wouldn't allow it? You've been invincible all over the world. Now that you've finally met an expert, shouldn't you stimulate your willpower and completely crush him? Some people can't be defeated," Ono Tuan Feng said. He spoke very seriously, especially after he firmly believed that Wang Ling was an immortal, and this belief was even more unwavering. That Hulong saying from number 60 high school in Huaxiao Nation was really strong. "You're the same as my parents. You don't know what I want." Big Wild Ball Keed sighed and looked at Moriyama Keed. In fact, the wild group Maple didn't mean to directly inherit the casino when he mentioned running the family business. Instead, he wanted to rely on the abilities he had learned so far to change the industry. He wanted to turn his own company into a gambling rehabilitation center or something like that. This was what Big Wild Maple had always wanted to do. "Won't you think about it again?" Moriyama Keed asked when he saw the determination in Big Wild Maple's eyes. "I won't get involved in this anymore." Big Wild Maple stood up and said seriously, "Fine." Moriyama Keed shook his head and smiled bitterly. "When we heard the news that Hulong Sang wins the world, we wanted to rope this Hulong Sang in, but unfortunately, he didn't appreciate it all. That's why we, the Rainbow Seven Suns gang, decided to join forces to embarrass him. Even if you don't want to help, there will be others who will. I advise you to be careful," Big Wild Maple said. Ono Tuan Keed said, "Those people in the student union may already be Holang Sang's fans. Also, that Miss Lotus Sun who came with Hulong Sang has been taking good care of him." "So what?" Moriyama Keed smiled. "I've looked up information on this Hulong Sang. He was born in an ordinary well-to-do family. A sparrow is destined to be a sparrow. He won't amount to anything." Big Wild Maple was silent for a moment before he replied coldly, "Then do as you wish. Then, He turned and left quickly. After leaving the conference room, a bleak, cold wind blew on Big Wild Maple's cheeks. Time, Friday, December 18th, 3:15 in the morning. It was a little far to go home now, and Big Wild Maple was upset. He didn't want to go back, so he took a small path in the direction of the student apartments in Area S. It was as if someone had predicted that he would show up here. He had only taken a few steps when he was blocked by a familiar figure. "Student Big Wild Maple, I've been waiting for you for a long time." Leek Sasaki's eyes were filled with pleasant surprise when he saw Big Wild Maple. He hadn't expected Wang Ming's prediction to be completely accurate. He had actually been able to intercept Big Wild Maple on this small path. Brother Fool's prediction was too accurate. Amazing. "President? Why are you?" Big Wild Maple clearly hadn't expected Leek Sasaki to be waiting here at this time. It was as if he had predicted that he would come. "Don't ask me where I'm from." Leek Sasaki looked at him, his golden hair glistening in the moonlight as if it had been coated with a layer of wax. "I know, that guy Moriyama Kid came looking for you, right? Are the Rainbow Seven Sons gang also planning to deal with Ho Lang-san?" Big Wild Maple didn't respond, which could be considered a tacit admission. "Also, it seems to me that you don't intend to continue participating, right?" Leek Sasaki looked at Big Wild Maple and smiled. "That's a very smart choice. Whether I participate or not doesn't seem to have anything to do with the president," Big Wild Maple replied coldly. He was just about to leave. Leek Sasaki continued, "They don't understand you, but I do. You're learning all these skills now to change the way your family operates, right?" These words made Big Wild Maple's figure freeze on the spot. He turned around in disbelief and looked at Leek Sasaki. One had to know that even his parents didn't understand this matter. "I know, student Big Wild. And I also know how to help you," Leek Sasaki said. Of course he knew, because of everything that Big Wild Maple was saying now. Wang Ming had calculated everything remotely through his brain deduction technique. All Leek Sasaki needed to do was make good use of his identity as the president of the student union. "Actually, you really want to ask Ho Lang-san for advice, right? But you're too embarrassed to ask." It was clear that Leek Sasaki's words had struck Big Wild Maple's heart. "If you want to ask Ho Lang-san for advice, there's actually a very convenient way," Leek Sasaki said at that moment. "What way?" Big Wild Maple was clearly interested. "Join the cult." "Join the cult?" "Yes, join the cult. Have you heard of a cult in Huashio that exchanges literature? Gray Cult. It's actually Ho Lang-san's fan club." Leek Sasaki smiled as he looked at the youngster in front of him. "So, student Big Wild, do you want to join the cult?" Chapter 1546. This was the first time Wild Group Maple had heard of Wang Ling's essay, and also the first time he knew that there was a fan club on Earth whose core members were literature lovers. To Wild Group Maple, joining a fan club was a little demonic. After all, wasn't a fan club something that only idols and celebrities could have? He thought of a certain female idol in the otaku circle holding a concert. Those fanatical otaku fans would have headbands tied around their heads, and they would wear sweatshirts and baggy pants with their idol's name printed on them as they waved their glow sticks in unison to the rhythm of their idol's singing. As they waved their glow sticks, they would hum ha-ha as they cheered. Was he going to wave his glow stick for Ho Lang-sang too? Wild Group Maple couldn't help shivering all over at this thought. From a normal man's point of view, he really couldn't imagine it. And since it was a literary fan club, singing or something was unlikely. Could it be that they were going to recite poems and wave their glow sticks at the same time? I think classmate Ono might be thinking too much. Actually, the Gray Sect is more normal than any fan club. It's just an ordinary exchange of literature. It was as if Leek Sasaki knew what Wild Group Maple was thinking, and he wiped his sweat. "Also, I checked classmate Ono's cultural results, and you're ranked among the best in our high school." The truth was that even Class S students weren't proficient in all subjects in 9 paths in high school. As long as they were proficient in 1 or 2 subjects, they could still enter the S-level sequence with super high learning points and reward points. Wild Group Maple's results in Kendo class were excellent. He was also among the best in Chinese class. Generally speaking, there were 2 main factors for mastering a subject to the pinnacle. One was talent, and the other was interest. Of course, hard work was also important, but there were some things that couldn't be done with just a little effort. For example, Big Pigeon Kushwan. He had never thought that working hard to write 20,000 words would result in 10 chapters in one every day. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it. As long as I joined the Gray Sect, I can get closer to Holang Sang. While Group Maple's eyes were still a little suspicious, Leek Sasaki gave his earnest and well-meaning advice. I'm now the head of Sun Island's 9 Paths and the Gray Sect branch. As long as classmate Maple performs well before Holang Sang and the others leave the island, I can give you the position of deputy head. And deputy head will actually have a chance to communicate with Holang Sang, although it's an online question. But at that time, if Big Wild Tuan Phone wants to ask something, are you still afraid that Holang Sang won't tell you? This sounded very tempting, but in reality, it was half a lie and half a coax. Wang Ling didn't have the time to answer these fans. The so-called opportunity to communicate. Actually, the person they were really talking to wasn't Wang Ling. It was Lotus Sunday. Anyway, who would know who you were chatting with through the screen? It was a way to help the fan club grow. Of course, Lotus Sun was also preparing for the things Maple wanted to learn and understand. It wasn't just gambling skills, he just needed to learn it. As for now, after learning that he could indeed deepen his connection with Wang Ling after joining the sect, Wild Maple was indeed moved. What I need to do after joining the sect, of course, is to expand our 9 Paths and the Gray Sect's branches and rope in more Holang Sang's fans. Of course, there was still a literature assessment. I could check the results of the cultural classes using the student union system. I won't consider those below grade A for now. I see. Onotuan Keed nodded. Then, he looked at the leak and said seriously, Fine, I've decided. I'll join the sect. Smart choice. Leek Keed nodded and smiled. After agreeing to join the sect, there was no news of Big Maple returning to the dormitory, because joining the Gray Sect meant that he had something new to look forward to. The gloominess he had felt in the Z-Phone Club branch conference room instantly disappeared. Lee Keed brought Big Maple to the student union office. He saw that Sparrow was seriously compiling the relevant data on the computer. For some reason, Big Maple felt that Deputy President Sparrow of the student union seemed a little different from before. He felt that classmate Six-Eyed Akagami seemed a lot more approachable. To be honest, the wild group Maple had a deep impression of Sparrow. The main thing was that every time he saw Deputy President Sparrow, he couldn't help feeling a cold wind blow past him. It was as if some kind of ghost was staring at him. But now, this feeling had completely disappeared. This was all thanks to Lotus Sun's rescue in the haunted house. Sparrow helped Big Maple register. He has already agreed to join the sect. As soon as he entered the office, Leek Keed carefully and quickly closed the door, then reported the situation to Sparrow. Okay, Sparrow quickly typed on the keyboard. Big Maple then realized that there were actually quite a few new members on the screen in front of him. He also saw quite a few familiar names among them. Hikari Ononoko? Big Maple was blank. I remember that she's a very autistic girl. It seems that everyone who knows her at school says she's very strange. Classmate Hikari Ononoko has a little emotional problem, Leek Keed said. It said that she was enlightened by Ho Lang San in a dream. Big Maple. Why did it sound more and more strange to him? We judged that she was qualified to join the sect based on her previous cultural results. We didn't expect her to agree as soon as we asked. Leek Keed scratched his head and smiled. Actually, there were a lot of people like Hikari Ononoko who had cultural results and who had directly agreed to join the student union when they asked in private. There was no exception. All of them were people he had helped before, victims who had been forcibly turned into ghosts by 9 Palistar Light and the Hair Devil Spirit. Most of them couldn't remember what had happened, what the youngster who had spoken to them in the dream looked like, and what he had said. They had already forgotten everything. All that was left in their minds was a vague outline, a warmth that seemed like it would never fade, and the name Ho Lang. They also couldn't remember what Ho Lang meant. It was just that this word had a sense of familiarity to it. This was also one of the reasons why Wang Ling's pseudonym Wang Lang had received support from so many Nine Paths and high school students after it flooded the high school sword ranking list. Many of these students were from Class S and below. The ratio was higher in Class C and B, and there were also a few from Class A. Now, Nine Paths and the Gray Sect branch had been officially established under the leadership of Leek Keed, Wang Ming, and Sparrow. Sparrow had just programmed an invitation program to automatically filter out suitable targets and send them out. He hadn't expected to receive so many responses. Big Maple looked at the numbers on the side of the Excel list. Including him, there were actually 56 people who had agreed to join the sect. This was a higher number of members than some of the Rainbow Seven Sons gang. And the most important thing was, Leek Keed said that this was the first day that the Nine Paths and the Gray Sect branch had been established. So many people had agreed to apply on the first day. Then wouldn't the entire Nine Paths be taken over by the Gray Sect in the future? Was this the great man's strategy of surrounding the city from the countryside? Of course, what was most inconceivable to Big Maple was this Gray Sect fan club was Ho Lang Sang's fan club, and the branch head was the current president of the Nine Paths and the Student Union. Sun Island's Nine Paths and the local power to support a student who had come all the way from abroad and would only be staying for a few days. This sounded outrageous, but even so, the moment Big Maple saw the list, a sense of pride welled up in his heart. This kind of pride couldn't be felt in any of the Rainbow Seven Sons gangs. As expected of Ho Lang Sang, a true immortal, it had only been a few days. He could actually use his charisma to gain so many people's attention and support. As expected of the man he fancied. The registration has been completed, Big Maple. At that moment, Sparrow's words broke his train of thought. So fast. It's just copying and pasting personal information. It's no trouble, Sparrow said. Also, do you see the booklet on my desk? This is a printed version of the Gray Sect's program. Please recite it carefully. Otherwise, it won't be good if you're identified as a mole. There's a program. Big Maple was blank. He opened the booklet with a gray cover. The so-called Gray Sect program wasn't a program in the true sense of the word. It was actually the essay called Substitute, which Crispy Noodles Down Monarch had written for Wang Ling at the Nine Dragons Mountain Conclave back then. The famous line, "A speck of ash in the Times," had come from there. But just reciting this line clearly wouldn't make one a true fan. Thus, Lotus Sun had already set down the most basic conditions for joining the sect. That was recite the full text. Furthermore, each branch head would do a spot check every month, and those who couldn't recite it would be directly kicked out. We already have so many people on the first day. Can I still be a vice president? Big Maple looked at the list and was a little suspicious. It wasn't difficult for him to recite something. It was just that he was worried about whether Leek Sasaki's promise could be fulfilled. A branch can have up to 2 vice presidents. Student Big Maple is a student from Area S, and apart from me and Sparrow, you're the 3rd student from Area S to join the Gray Sect. Leek Sasaki said, "Since I promised Student Ono to be a vice president, of course I won't go back on my word. But Student Ono also has to cooperate and do some work. Otherwise, I'm afraid it'll be hard to convince the masses." "I understand," Big Maple said. "Then, what do you need me to do?" "Help us rope in more students from Area S." Leek Sasaki said, "Student Sparrow and I are members of the Student Council, so we're a special case. It's hard to talk to Area S. Area S. Those people are indeed stubborn. When I came out of the Purple Maple Society earlier, the Rainbow Seven Sons were planning to come up with a plan to embarrass Ho Lang Sang." "What kind of plan exactly?" "I've already made it clear that I won't get involved, so they've already excluded me." "Sigh, what a pity. Otherwise, you could be a spy. Do you know that gin wine in Detective Conan? It seems he's surrounded by spies. Or rather, we don't have any other way. Do we have spies in each of the Rainbow Seven Sons? I have a few brothers who are on good terms with me. I can ask them." Big Maple frowned. "But I don't know if they agree or not. Let's try our best." Okay, it was important to rope in the students from Area S. On the other hand, as a young man in the new cultivation era, the Upper Nine Paths and the Gray Church branch had a computer expert like Sparrow. As the president, Leek Sasaki had a lot of room to command. The next step was to expand the scale of the sect and increase the popularity of the Gray sect on Sun Island. Therefore, he asked Sparrow to register an account on Bilibili, Upper Nine Paths, and Gray Church Branch. He planned to post some interesting videos to increase the popularity of the Gray Church on the internet. At this moment, Leek Sasaki suddenly said, "I forgot to mention student Ono. Congratulations on joining the Gray Church." He reached out and shook Big Maple's hand tightly. "I'll do my best, Minister." Big Maple nodded. His expression was extremely serious. In the dormitory, Wong Ling sat cross-legged on the floor, naked from the waist up. Although he had tried his best to preserve his strength in today's battle, he had in fact used up a lot of the one-time talismans. He couldn't make more talismans in a short time. He could only use his own skills to patch up the one-time talismans that had already collapsed but weren't completely broken. It was impossible to completely patch them up. Some of the one-time talismans had collapsed too thoroughly, and there was already no way to salvage them. Even if the others were salvaged, they wouldn't be as effective as before. Take durability, for example. When a brand new one-time talisman came out of the oven, its durability was 100. Now that it had collapsed, Wong Ming could probably only save 1 to 5 durability points. No matter how small a mosquito's leg was, it was still meat. In the current situation, it was better than nothing. And now, these are the ones that have been salvaged. Wong Ling had originally had more than 90 talismans, but after today's selection, he only had 81 left. Not counting the ones that had been salvaged, there were less than 70 left. At that moment, Wong Ming gently patted Wong Ling on the back. Like a plaster, he pressed the salvaged one-time talismans back on Wong Ling one by one. But he didn't dare to use too much force. He was mainly afraid that if he slapped Wong Ling, he would break a bone. "Kid, why is your skin even fairer than Dan?" Wong Ming said with a smile as he helped Wong Ling put the talismans back on. Wong Ling was silent. He manually adjusted his skin color a little darker. Wong Ming looked at his rapidly darkening skin, and the corners of his mouth twitched. "It's fine as long as it's normal. You don't have to be as dark as an unlucky guy." After being mischievous for a while, Wong Ling quickly adjusted his skin color back. It was rare for the two brothers to talk in the quiet of the night. "I haven't reached the research stage for that black stone yet. It will take some time to analyze the box outside, but shouldn't be too difficult." Wong Ming said. "Unfortunately, Dan doesn't understand these things. I think it's best to have an assistant." Actually, at this point in Wong Ling's mind, a vague image of a person emerged. This person wasn't anyone else. It was that civilian scientist whom Ryoko Kinomiya and Lotus-san had recruited previously, Shochong. Chapter 1547. Recruiting an assistant was in fact a very important matter. Wong Ming actually had a lot of candidates in mind before, but he never had the courage to recruit them as his assistants. That was because the Dao Talisman Seal research was a top-secret project that Wong Ming had developed in private. If he found an unreliable person and the matter leaked out, everything would be over. Admittedly, whether it was Wong Ling's fearsome spells or Wong Ming's powerful brainwaves, both had the ability to erase a person's memory, or to set up some trap to seal the secret forever. Once the secret slipped out, that person would die or something like that. However, the two brothers were not cruel and merciless people. Research projects in the first place required sincere cooperation. Without mutual trust, they wouldn't be able to achieve their final goal. Wong Ming had actually been conflicted about choosing an assistant for several years. Ever since he had entered junior high school, he had in fact already had an idea. Unfortunately, he had never put into practice. At that moment, it wasn't as if Wong Ming hadn't paid attention to this internet celebrity folk scientist that Wong Ling had mentioned. There is a certain amount of controversy in the cultivation scientific community as to whether Shochong had genuine talent or not. By recording videos of him creating all kinds of strange little inventions, he had attracted a lot of attention online. Things like an essential oil face wiper, an automatic hair shampoo, an automatic ice cream liquor. The technical content of these little inventions was very average, and they were mainly for fun. It was just that no one expected Shoucheng to rely on these gadgets to explode online and then pull in a large number of Wang Duyu investments. To put it bluntly, whether or not Shoucheng had this ability couldn't be determined based on the rumors and slanders in the outside world. After all, in every circle, there were some people who thought they were infallible but didn't see the light of day. Seeing other people in the same circle explode in popularity, it was inevitable that they would be the ones to be sour. A lot of the time, when online rumors about certain people, especially things that didn't have any evidence, just take a look and laugh, without knowing the full picture, one wouldn't comment. Only a fool would believe everything. Of course, the biggest controversy about Shoucheng wasn't that he had relied on these little inventions to pull in investments. It was that a lot of the products he had customized actually had design flaws, and there was a lot of debate online about safety incidents. For example, Lotus Sun's cousin Fan Xing. He had been launched out of the building by Shoucheng's safety escape device, and he hadn't even landed. Fan Xing was still lying in the hospital like a mummy. His entire life was probably ruined. The most important thing was that he couldn't die no matter what. Every day, he was hanging on by a thread, and he was in so much pain. Hyperplegia prevented him from getting out of bed, and he couldn't even jump off a building. Fan Xing very much wanted his little brother to end his life. Unfortunately, after he fell, he became a zombie and lost the ability to speak. He lay on the bed and cried every day, unable to speak. Brother, to say to him with his eyes. Unfortunately, the lackey wiped away his tears and held his hand tightly. Brother Xing, brother, modern cultivation medical technology was so advanced. You will always be able to cure it. Fan Xing was in despair. Treat my ass. I just want to have a good time. Fu Wang Ming Ling, I fan, Dao, of phone, Tov, Mingda, Wang, fan of Ming heaven he Wang, Ling, good, Wang, to be he fact, Wang Ming. To be honest, he actually didn't know whether he was reliable or not. He just pinched his fingers together and deduced that Wang Ming's subsequent research would be related to Shoucheng. This person is very controversial in our circle, and even if I invite him, he might not listen to me. My identity is strictly confidential. In the eyes of outsiders, I'm nothing more than a hothead. Wang Ming smiled. On the other hand, Wang Ming had always had a hunch that Shoucheng. He felt that there were a lot of times when this old fox was playing the fool. Whether it was those strange little inventions posted online or the subsequent safety incidents, it was most likely the result of his mastermind. Take those safety incidents, for example. All the victims had behaved badly to a certain extent. In some sense, he was enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. But the police couldn't do anything about Shoucheng. That was because when it had signed the contract, Shoucheng had actually stipulated that any safety problems that occurred after the boss had confirmed the product's acceptance had nothing to do with him. It was clearly written on black and white paper. What else could they do? They could only treat it as an accident and leave it to the insurance company to handle. Yeah, it's really hard. In the girls' dormitory in Zone S, Lotus Sun and Jai Yin were studying the 126-point dice clock method that Wang Ling had just performed. After all, she would have to communicate with other people in Wang Ling's place later to deal with the problem of the wild group maple. They had to study the dice clock method. In the end, it was more difficult than Lotus Sun had imagined. Wow, how on earth did classmate Wang Ling do it? He took out the points and divided them into two halves. Lotus Sun was astonished. This required too much precision, and it was only now that Wang Ling was heavily sealed that he could do it. Normally, it would be impossible. If you're so curious, why don't you just ask your Wang Ling directly? Jiayin couldn't help teasing. Sister Factor, you're joking with me again? Lotus Sun blushed. Actually, these were all trivial matters to her, and she could do her own research. She cherished every opportunity to talk to Wang Ling, even if it was just through text messages or other communication software. She would never disturb him for no reason unless it was a particularly urgent matter. Classmate Wang Ling likes peace and quiet. If I send him frequent messages, he'll hate me. Lotus Sun smiled. Then, she stared at the dice clock in front of her, lost in thought. Looking at the girl's thoughtful expression, Jaine couldn't help sighing silently in her heart. This girl was so sensible that it made one's heart ache. She just didn't know how much longer she would have to endure it. It was said that it was a difficult process for a daughter-in-law to become a mother-in-law, but for some reason, after seeing Lotus Sun and Wang Ling, Jaine suddenly felt that this bit of suffering didn't seem like much. Wang Ling had used the spirit energy at his fingertips for the 126-point dice clock method. Lotus Sun felt that it would be difficult for her to emulate him on this point. But if it was combined with Sword Dao, it might work. She stared at the dice clock in her hand for a while and felt that she had a way to crack it. Although it was a different approach, in the end it was still a way out. And the point was that the wild group Maple was also an expert in Sword Dao, so her method might be a little easier for him to accept. Lotus Sun had also carefully considered developing the wild group Maple into a deputy minister of the Nine Paths and the Gray Sect branch. Her sudden act of pretending to be Kyryoko and participating in the competition had probably alarmed a lot of people in the Q family. Although there hadn't been any particular activity yet, Lotus Sun had a feeling that it wouldn't be long before the storm arrived. In this situation, the most important thing was to establish her identity. As the head of the Gray Sect, the Nine Paths, and all the Gray Sect disciples could in fact provide a good cover for her plan to pretend to be Kyryoko. The reason why Lotus Sun thought so highly of Wild Group Maple was mainly because of his overall battle strength. Compared with Leek Sasaki, Wild Group Maple, who was proficient in Sword Dao, was actually stronger than Lotus Sunday. In addition, it was just as Leek Sasaki had said. Wild Group Maple and the Rainbow Seven Suns gang would have an easier time doing things as a candidate for president of the Purple Maple Society branch. Then a mature management system would be established in the Nine Paths and the Gray Sect branch. Leek Sasaki would be in charge of command and communication. Sparrow would be in charge of the internet layout and statistics, and Wild Group Maple would be in charge of protection and instigation of traitors. It wasn't completely without reason that Lotus Sun thought so highly of Wild Group Maple. The most important thing was that Wild Group Maple had passed Mysterious C's Sword Chi recognition. Even at the final stage of today's 5-person trial, he had deliberately made things difficult for Wang Ling and had even set up a trap. But the truth was that he wasn't a bad person by nature. In fact, he was someone with a very high EQ. On the other side, Wild Group Maple's actual actions didn't disappoint her. Leek Sasaki and Sparrow's suggestion was for him to plant a mole in the Rainbow Seven Suns gang and split them from the inside. In order to complete this plan, after Wild Group Maple joined the Gray Sect, his next step was naturally to find a brother who was on good terms with him to join the sect. And the first person he thought of was Lan Lu, who Wang Ling had fought with earlier. He was the president of the Blue Face Society. Given that the Rainbow Seven Suns gang was currently united, with Lan Lu's identity as president, there was practically no information that couldn't be obtained. In the office of the Blue Face Society branch, Lan Lu sat in his seat in a daze. He had driven everyone else out of the office because he didn't want anyone to see his dazed expression. And most importantly, the reason for his dazed expression wasn't because of Wang Ling. It was actually because of Ho Langsan. After his fight with Wang Ling, he had been reflecting on that fight all this time. He clearly remembered that he had been injured during the fight because of the backlash. But after he woke up from his coma, he hadn't felt the slightest bit of discomfort. Even if the referee had released a healing spray, he shouldn't have been injured at all. When Wild Group Maple opened the office door and saw Lan Lu's appearance, he couldn't help smiling in his heart. Sure enough, everything was as he had expected. It seemed that everyone who had fought Ho Langsan before had been conquered by his personal charm. Brother Lu, you look very distressed. Wild Group Maple pushed open the door with a smile on his face. Lan Lu thought it was that blind member again, and was about to scold him away, but when he saw who it was, he shut his mouth. Wild Group Maple liked to add the word brother to the surname of people he was familiar with or respected. It didn't matter if the other party was older or younger than him. He would call them that. It made them seem closer. When Lon Lon Lu saw a wild group Maple come over, he didn't say anything and didn't even ask, "What are you doing here?" Wild group Maple didn't treat himself as an outsider and directly sat down in the vice president's seat as he looked at him. I'm guessing that Brother Lu is thinking about Ho Lang San. With his thoughts exposed, Lon Lon Lu wanted to retort, but he opened his mouth and closed it again. Indeed, he was a straight man, and he kept thinking about a man in his mind. It was a little hard to talk about this kind of thing. What if someone misunderstood his sexual orientation? What else do you know? Lon Lon Lu didn't deny it, and just stared at wild group Maple. Brother Lu probably feels the same way. It's the feeling I have after fighting with Ho Lang Sang. I'm really looking forward to fighting with him again. Lon Lon Lu's pupils contracted, and he almost instantly perked up. He had been distressed for a long time, and no one knew what he was thinking. Who would have thought that in the end, it would be his good brother Wild Group, Maple, who would take the initiative to look for him? Hearing this, Lon Lon Lu couldn't help sighing with emotion. That's right, he's a magical man. He looks weak, but he seems to be very strong, and there's a sense of mystery. After saying that, he couldn't help but smile bitterly. Unfortunately, I might not have the chance to fight Ho Lang San again in the future. I don't think so. Wild Group Maple smiled and said, I have a way here that can help Brother Lu deepen the relationship between you and Ho Lang San. I know. You mean the Gray Sect? You actually know. After I came back, I actually looked into some things about Ho Lang San. Of course, it's not because I have malicious intentions, but because I respect him. Lon Lon Lu said, but I don't seem to be qualified to join the Gray Sect. My language scores are too bad. That doesn't matter, Wild Group Maple said. As long as Brother Lu is willing, I can help you apply for special approval first, and then give you tuition. As long as you meet the standards for the monthly test. Is that okay? Of course. Wild Group Maple nodded. He looked at Lon Lon Lu, revealing the same expression as when Leek Sasaki asked him. So, Brother Lu, are you ready to join the sect? Lon Lon Lu immediately stood up. He looked very excited. I, always ready. Then, Brother Lu, welcome to the sect. Next, I want to ask you about the current situation in the gang. Roughly 10 minutes later, Lotus Sun received information from Leek Sasaki. Wild Group Maple had obtained this information after communicating with Lon Lon Lu. The other leaders of the Rainbow Seven Sons were currently planning to organize an upper-class student gathering that only students from Area S could attend, and then invite Wang Ling over. Before she finished reading the invitation, Lotus Sun instantly laughed. Upper class? How upper class could it be? Showing off their family's wealth, whether custom-made spirit swords or magic treasures. Lotus Sun had seen too many scenes since she was a child. What hadn't she seen before? She suddenly sighed with emotion at the childishness of this group of people. She had thought that Nine Paths and the student from Area S would be plotting something big, but it turned out to be just this. In fact, Lotus Sun didn't even bother to look at this kind of Chinibi gathering. The banquet says that you have to bring a valuable magic treasure to make an appearance. It's really childish behavior. Jiayin couldn't help laughing when she saw the invitation. Sure enough, Lotus Sun dropped her forehead into her hand. Competing in magic treasures, classmate Wang Ling could probably smash those people's magic treasures to smithereens if he transformed them with a pile of shit. Chapter 1548. Number 60 High's group was fretting over the upper-class banquet. On the other side, Monk Jin Deng was still conscientiously carrying out the task that Wang Ling had given him. After accepting the chaos armor, he followed Qi's footsteps. However, Qi's speed was just too fast. When the steel wings on his back spread out, he could freely travel through space. It was equivalent to having an earth-shrinking technique that had no cooldown time and did not require him to activate it. All he needed to do was open the steel wings. Apart from that, the Bai also had the advantage of not having to worry about the invasion of chaos. The flow of time in the primal chaos was very different from that on Earth. The monk had only been chasing for a short while, but a long time might have passed on Earth on the way to return the chaos armor. Tyrant didn't see Bai's figure at all. He couldn't help but have a thought. If he chased after her without any restrictions when they returned to Earth, Would Ling Jinren already have children? After restraining his dangerous thoughts, Tyrant was startled for a moment. Then, he increased his speed again. He pulled out his head and put it upside down on his back. Then, it was accompanied by a loud bang. The 6 rings on his head suddenly emitted endless blue flames, bringing Tyrant's body forward at a rapid speed. This was a head-mounted backpack accelerator, a small skill that Monk had researched in his spare time. It wasn't too powerful, but it was more practical. However, Tyrant had never shown it in front of outsiders because it was scary to use. Using the skull-type backpack accelerator and the distance reduction technique that didn't stop moving an inch, the monk finally felt the aura of Bai getting closer to him. If that's the case, I should be able to catch up very soon. At this moment, the head behind the monk's back revealed a calm smile. In front of him, carrying Peng Shiren, was a hoe that was 1,000,000 light years away. Suddenly, he felt a familiar aura approaching from behind. Is it that monk? You frowned, not knowing why the monk was chasing after him. Could it be that he wanted to take advantage of the fact that he had lost 2 chaos weapons and was seriously injured? Could it be that he wanted to kill him while he was down? If this had happened to someone else, they might have been on guard. But if it's Monk Jin Deng, I don't think he would do something so immoral. Let go of me. Peng Shiren was tightly restrained by Deng Long. He wanted to wait for Bai to bring him some distance away before looking for an opportunity to escape. However, he had underestimated the power of an Earth progenitor. He was only a Dao ancestor, but Hui was the Earth ancestor. There was still a gap between them of the human ancestor level. Therefore, even though Qi was injured, it was still more than enough to suppress him. If you don't listen to me, don't blame me for beating Air Shuahua. Meng glared at Peng Shiren angrily. In his youth, Peng Shiren had been taught many lessons by Dao Ancestor Wang and Qi in the past. It was naturally Dao Ancestor Wang who had taught him more lessons. Sometimes Dao Ancestor Wang just happened to be busy and could not make a move. As the spirit of the Dharma form with its own consciousness, Qi would fight on his behalf. Peng Shiren in the past. Every inch of his flesh. Don't let them off. Even now, as a victim, Peng Shiren could not help but shiver when he thought about it. He thought he could break free. But now that it was obvious that he could not escape, he could only feign civility for the time being. Brother Zheng, in that case, where exactly is my master? Peng Shiren asked in a low voice. This was something that Peng Shiren had always wanted to know. Because if Dao Ancestor Wang existed, it would affect his next plan. Qi replied, I don't know. This seemed like an excuse, but in reality, Qi really did not know where Dao Ancestor Wang had gone. He was an independent spirit of the Dharma form. Although he could move on his own and had the ability to think independently, moreover, he could continue to live even after his master disappeared. But there was one thing that would not change. That was, Qi could never go against Dao Ancestor Wang's will. And this was also the reason why Qi wanted to snatch Peng Shiren back. Because whenever Peng Shiren encountered danger, an alarm that ordinary people could not hear would ring out in his head, making him extremely irritated. For a very long time, Peng Shiren did not speak. Even Qi did not know where his master Dao Ancestor Wang was. This time, Peng Shiren was really a little unsure. Brother Zheng, where are you taking me? Peng Shiren asked again. My residence, Qi said, concise and to the point. The current Peng Shiren was too good at causing trouble. Qi felt that it was better for him to watch. Of course, the most important thing was that Peng Shiren was colluding with that person that Qi really disliked. Back then, Dao Ancestor Wang had paid such a huge price to suppress that grave god. He did not expect that after countless years, in exchange for the scene of his only disciple breaking the seal. He did not know how deep the connection between Peng Shiren and that grave god was. But on the way, he heard Peng Shiren mention a very strange thing. That was that the grave god had actually written his deeds into a book, and the title was Records of the Grave God. Qi sighed. He decided to imprison Peng Shiren in his residence. After recovering a little from his injuries, he would go and get rid of that grave god once and for all. Although the other party was very strong, as long as he had not merged with the other half of the soul in the heavenly tomb, his chances of winning were still very high. But now that he had lost 2 chaotic weapons, his chances of winning would drop a little from the original foundation. But overall, the situation of that battle would not change. But he did not know why. He always had a feeling of uneasiness in his heart. In the infinite galaxy, in front of an unknown 7-colored star plate, Chi held Peng Shiren and stopped in his tracks. He seemed to be waiting for something. Not long after, Golden Lamp Monk, who carried a head as a projectile, appeared. Chi, probably only a monk could think of such a strange move. Chi, you run too fast. Golden Lamp chased all the way here, but his face was not red, and he was not out of breath. Why did you chase me all the way? Chi's eyes were slightly vigilant. This is the monk at my door. Although I lost my chaotic energy and was injured, I still have a lot of magic treasures at home that can be used. This poor monk chased you all the way, of course, not to fight you. The monk smiled kindly, then took out the completely repaired chaos armor from his sleeve and explained the purpose of his visit. I am here to return this item. Seeing the intact chaos armor, Chi was obviously stunned for a while. His armor had been crushed like tofu pudding earlier. Could it be repaired? Chapter 1549. The 2 chaos artifacts had been smashed to pieces, and, in his opinion, there was no way they could be repaired. This was also one of the flaws of these chaos artifacts, because there was no material in the world that could replace this natural material derived from chaos. If a magic artifact was worn out, it could be soaked in chaos for maintenance and so on. But if there was a gap, chaos couldn't repair it. Not to mention the fact that it had been smashed to pieces. Even if there was only a small scratch on a magic artifact, it couldn't be repaired by soaking in chaos. Actually, Zheng had long been resentful about this. It was indeed a headache that this chaos artifact didn't have a screen-shattering risk. So, when the chaos armor appeared in front of him in perfect condition, his expression was one of utter amazement. Since this chaos armor can be repaired, then my corpse-wrapping picture, Zheng said suspiciously. Wang Ling's strength was astonishing, and he had to admit that he had underestimated that youngster. He had never expected him to be able to repair a chaos artifact. But the chaos armor and the corpse-wrapping picture were essentially the same thing. Since the chaos armor could be repaired, then in theory his corpse-wrapping picture should also be able to be repaired. The corpse-wrapping picture has indeed been repaired. Monks didn't lie, and Monk knew Zheng's temper, so it was better to be honest. Where's the picture? Ling Zhenren said he wanted to study it for a few days. He'll return it to you when he's done. The corner of Zheng's mouth twitched. Can you give me a deadline? Deadline or whatever. You're treating me like an outsider. Monk Golden Lamp put the head on his back. The expression on his face was as benevolent as ever. To tell you the truth, since these 2 chaos artifacts were smashed to pieces in the previous battle, they don't have any special value to Ling Zhenren. He wouldn't deliberately delay returning them. Hearing this, Zheng took a deep breath. After the battle, the 2 chaos artifacts that had been beyond repair had been repaired. This could already be considered a pleasant surprise. Since that youngster had sent Monk to return the chaos armor to him, that meant that he really didn't covet these 2 treasures. The corpse-wrapping picture had been around longer than the chaos armor, and was an ancient artifact. She pondered that perhaps Wang Ling was interested in matters of the ages. He wanted to use the corpse-wrapping picture to ask those ancient experts who had been suppressed in the picture. The idea seemed crazy at the time. That was because these ancient experts had been sealed in the diagram for a long time. Their souls were trapped inside, unable to escape. They had long since gone insane. You can never expect a psychopath to confess anything to you. Therefore, regarding the Golden Lamp Monk's words, Meng didn't mind it too much. Fine, if he wants to keep it, then let's keep it. After looking at it for a long time, it's just like that. It's meaningless. He understood the shroud diagram too well. A picture was unfolded, and it was filled with ghastly white bones. There were no young ladies wearing stockings, nor were there any young and beautiful female university students. Even if there were, they were nothing more than pink skeletons. After looking at it for a long time, other than being able to clearly count the number of bones on a man and a woman's body, It seemed to have no other value. Dusk felt that as long as Wang Ling got tired of studying it, it wouldn't be long before he could return it to her. Thinking of this, he turned around and placed his hand on the 7-colored astrolabe on his back. Just as he was about to enter the password, he found that Monk Golden Lamp had not left. "Sue?" ? Tyrant replied. "I've come all the way here to deliver the Chaos Armor. Are you going to be so stingy that you won't even give me a cup of tea?" Dusk was silent. Actually, he didn't hate the tyrant. It was just that he was used to being alone and had never brought anyone else back to his residence. There were only 2 of them in this area, Peng Shiren and the tyrant. One was the Tao ancestor's personal disciple, and the other could be considered an old acquaintance of his. "Go in, don't touch anything," Dusk warned coldly. Then he twisted his palm and opened the passage to the astrolabe. Tyrant smiled and took a step forward. At the same time, the grave god suddenly opened his eyes in the star-devouring array. It looked like everything had gone smoothly. Everything had been within the grave god's expectations, including the fact that Peng Shiren's soul had been taken away by Dusk. "What do you plan to do next, Senior?" Chiyechiahu asked. "Are you going to save Senior Shiren?" "Save?" The grave god smiled. Because he already didn't need Peng Shiren, this was a game of chess. From a moment Peng Shiren had made up his mind to go to Earth to cause trouble for Wang Ling, he had already made up his mind. In the end, this kid had lost because he was too young and too cautious. In order to be safe, he had actually placed his body in the star-devouring array and sent his soul to Earth. It had started as early as that. The grave god had thought of a plan that would satisfy both sides. He had then sent out the ancient divine weapon to pretend to rescue Peng Shiren, while in fact, he had wanted to draw Dusk to Peng Shiren's side. The plan to have Dusk rescue Peng Shiren. The premise of this plan was that he had to know that Dusk still existed in this universe. And this, ever since the grave god and Peng Shiren had decided to work together, he had immediately sensed Dusk's existence. Peng Shiren was the only one who had been kept in the dark. He was far more familiar with Tao Ancestor Wang and Dusk than Peng Shiren had imagined. And now, Peng Shiren's soul had been taken back to his residence by Dusk. This was actually part of his plan. As long as Peng Shiren didn't come out, then the next step of his plan could be carried out. "My venerable self doesn't need him anymore," the grave god said with a smile. "But only Senior Shiren knows the location of the heavenly tomb." "That's right." The grave god nodded. He then turned to look at Peng Shiren's body, whose eyes were closed. And his mistake was that he left this body in the star-devouring array. Chiyechiahu was stunned. He hadn't expected the grave god to be this kind of grave god. In the end, what he wanted was not the heavenly tomb itself, but Senior Peng Shiren's body. The grave god glanced at Chiyechiahu. He didn't care about the strange thoughts in Chiyechiahu's mind. His original plan was to feign civility and cooperate with Peng Shiren. After the heavenly tomb devoured the other half of his soul, he would then devour Peng Shiren. As for the current plan, it was plan number 2. The only difference from plan number 1 was that Peng Shiren's soul was still being held by Dusk. He couldn't devour it, but it made no difference to the grave god whether he devoured it or not. His original goal was only to take back the things that were sealed in the heavenly tomb that belonged to him. "Shiren, go. Take me to the heavenly tomb." At this moment, the grave god opened his evil eye. He placed his hand on Peng Shiren's body and called out softly. This was a simple spell that could awaken muscle memory. Even if Peng Shiren's soul wasn't here, as long as his body went to the heavenly tomb, it would automatically move like a walking corpse. Under the control of this spell, it would automatically move like a walking corpse. All the grave god had to do was follow Peng Shiren's body. Buzz! Peng Shiren's eyes, which had been tightly shut, suddenly emitted a bright red light. Then, he slowly stood up and moved. The starlight under his feet slowly gathered. In the next breath, he disappeared from the devouring star. "All of you, stay here and wait for my return." The grave god left these words for Chiyechiahu, the silver-skinned human king, and Jiao Gongxinghui. Then, he disappeared in an instant and went after Peng Shiren's body. He just had to wait for the other half of his soul that was sealed in the heavenly tomb. Then, everything would come to an end. He no longer had to wait for Peng Shiren's arrangements and act according to anyone's wishes, because at that time, he would have 10 times the power he had when he was at his peak. He would truly be omnipotent and destroy everything. Even if Zhue appeared, he wouldn't be a match for him. After traveling through the infinite Milky Way for billions of light years, the universe here gradually became clear. The reason why it was clear was because the grave god discovered that there were very few galaxies in this space. Even the meteorites floating in the air seemed to have decreased a lot. After looking through the deep, chaotic, and profound star map of the universe, even the grave god discovered for the first time that there was such a unique paradise in the infinite Milky Way. This place was too clean. It was as if it was a place that hadn't been polluted. In fact, the grave god could even feel the flow of air in this space. All the things that defied common sense were actually reflected in this space. "Is the heavenly tomb located here?" the grave god said with a profound gaze. It was no wonder that after so many years of searching for the heavenly tomb in the infinite Milky Way, he still couldn't find it. The infinite Milky Way was too vast, and there were too many mysterious places that even he had never thought of. If he searched with common sense, he definitely wouldn't find anything. In front of him, Peng Shiren's physical body had already slowed down, and it finally stopped at a certain coordinate. The grave god couldn't help but laugh. "You paid such a huge price to seal me for so many years. I'm afraid that even you didn't expect that today's seal would be broken by your proudest disciple, right?" At this moment, Peng Shiren expressionlessly raised his hand and activated the universal passcode in his hand. A spatial crack that was just big enough for one person to pass through appeared. The grave god thought that the passage was about to open, but right at this moment, the sound of bells suddenly rang out from the crack. An old woman with a hunched back and a lantern in her hand came out of the crevice. The handle of this lantern was a dragon head, and it looked like an ancient object at first glance. Below the lantern hung a series of golden bells. As the old woman staggered forward, they constantly swayed and emitted a crisp sound. The grave god was slightly displeased by the sound. The bells were no ordinary objects. They were clearly also ancient objects. It was a lantern made from a chaotic object, and below it hung a series of bells that also came from a chaotic object. "Who is it?" the old woman said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it sounded like a heavenly bell in this space. The sound waves spread out and gradually grew stronger. In the end, it was like a tsunami that swept up the surrounding wind. The sound of an explosion came from the distant space. The old woman's greeting directly caused the space to react violently, and a shockwave spread very far away. The ear-piercing howls of the wind were actually the wails of the spirits of the planets. Interesting. The grave god opened up his spiritual shield and stood there unmoving. This kind of display of strength was unable to do anything to him. "This old one has been ordered by the Tao ancestor to guard the heavenly tomb. No one is allowed to approach." The old woman looked at the evil-eyed creature in front of her. The grave god floated in the air, maintaining his cross-legged posture. He looked insufferably arrogant. His dark purple skin was tattooed with blood-red battle tattoos. His seemingly dry and shriveled face had 3 evil eyes that didn't belong to a human growing on it. His pitch-black mane flowed down his temples and was braided into 2 braided braids. She actually knew about the grave god's origins. Those evil eyes were his greatest symbol. With just those eyes alone, she could recognize that this was the terrifying creature that Tao ancestor Wang had paid a huge price to deal with back then. Thus, the old woman didn't dare to slack off in the slightest. The location of the heavenly tomb was a secret. Apart from Peng Shiren, no one else had the ability to find this place. As for the grave god's sudden appearance, the old woman understood everything when she saw Peng Shiren, who was being manipulated like a puppet. Those who force their way into the heavenly tomb will die. The old woman didn't say anything else. As the grave guardian of the heavenly tomb, she had to complete the mission that Tao ancestor Wang had entrusted to her. Even if she had to pay with her life, she had to do everything possible to stop the person in front of her. Even though the old woman knew in her heart that there was a huge difference in strength between her and the grave god. The universe is about to fall into chaos. The old woman said in her heart before she made up her mind to attack. Buzz! The next moment, the old woman lifted the lantern in her hand and opened the revolving lid. She used 2 fingers to take out the white flame inside, and then flicked it towards the grave god. Go! The old woman shouted softly. The small white flame instantly exploded with a destructive brilliance that was as bright as a star. The white flame turned into a unicorn and rushed towards the grave god. The scene created by the small white flame was vast and boundless. In an instant, the entire space was engulfed in a spiritual sea. Almost every inch of the space was in chaos. Seeing this scene, the grave god retracted its spiritual shield and allowed itself to be baptized by the white flame. He allowed himself to be baptized by the white flames. There was only a slight burning sensation, not much pain. The old woman was shocked. She didn't expect that her heavenly ocean sacred flame would lose its effect. That was a type of ancient flame, a supreme sacred flame cultivated from harvesting the core flames of hundreds of millions of stars. But now, the heavenly ocean's sacred flame had no effect on the grave god at all. The old woman's eyes widened in shock. Although she already knew that there was a difference in strength between her and the monster in front of her, she didn't expect the monster to be this strong. Is that it? Then it's my turn to attack. At this moment, the grave god in front of her shouted, "Weaklings, retreat." Then he stretched out a finger, and a powerful spiritual light shot out from his fingertip, directly splitting the white flame in front of him into 2. When the old woman came back to her senses, the grave god had already split the sea and grabbed her head. Chapter 1550. The moment her head was grabbed by the pitch-black claw, the old woman felt her blood rush to her head, and her lips trembled. She did not show it on the surface, but she was actually terrified. Although she had expected the strength of the person in front of her, she did not expect him to be this strong. Sometimes, the difference in strength could be seen in simple details. Not only did the grave gods retreat for the weak, divine light instantly cut through her sea of holy flames, it also grabbed her head at a speed invisible to the naked eye. Although I had expected that the old man would send someone to guard the heavenly tomb, I did not expect him to send such a weak servant. I didn't expect that the one they sent to guard the tomb would be such an unbearable servant, said the grave goddess. With his current strength, he would not panic even if he encountered a hoe. But the old woman in front of him was much weaker than the hoe. I know I'm no match for you, but there is always someone stronger than you. I advise you to understand that. The old woman sneered, but she was neither servile nor overbearing. Of course I understand that, but you don't know that I have always been the strongest. The grave god sighed and could not help but laugh. When I take back the other half of the soul in the heavenly tomb and kill that young man on earth, there will be no more trouble in the universe. As soon as he finished speaking, the hand that was holding the old woman suddenly rumbled, and endless dark chaotic light was released from his palm. It directly poured down from the top of the old woman's head. It contained powerful spiritual energy and the power of rules, showing the grave god's extraordinary power. The old woman's body was enveloped by this black light. She was like a little chick that had been lifted up, completely unable to resist. Her body inflated like a balloon. Then, pum, she turned into a cloud of ashes. Under the powerful energy pouring down, the old woman did not even have a chance to scream. Too weak. You can't even withstand a single blow. The grave god stopped. He had thought that the heavenly tomb's guardian would not be too weak. In the end, he was just an idiot who relied on a few chaotic tools to show off. Among the ancient figures who did not have a few chaotic tools, the grave god still had a lot of them. He had thought that, as the heavenly tomb's tomb guardian, he would at least be able to force him to take out a chaos tool to show his respect. Unexpectedly, this old woman was too weak. He glanced at the place where the old woman had disappeared. His face was expressionless as he turned around and walked toward the place where the old woman had just appeared. Just now, the old woman had stepped out of the spatial rift opened by Sheeran. The grave god felt that this spatial fissure was a passageway to the heavenly tomb. He had already memorized the exact coordinates. Old man, you didn't expect this, did you? In the end, you buried me and sealed me here. In the end, I had to dig your coffin out with my own hands. At this moment, the grave goddess stretched out her sharp claws. He possessed unparalleled strength, directly piercing into the void, forcefully ripping open the space of that coordinate. For a moment, the space nearby trembled and thunder rumbled. Waves of powerful spiritual energy spread out with the tomb god at the center. Divine light shot into the sky, creating a shocking scene. Such a shocking scene. If there were any spectators, they would definitely exclaim that doomsday had arrived. On the other hand, the grave goddess seemed to have done something very normal. His expression was calm, and no matter how horrifying the scene around him was, there was no change in his expression. After a few seconds of clawing at the spatial fissure, the grave goddess's eyes finally trembled. It's done. The closed spatial fissure in the heavenly tomb was open again. The grave goddess was pleasantly surprised, as if her long-cherished wish of many years had finally been fulfilled. However, just as she was about to lean out, a pair of old hands reached out from the spatial fissure and grabbed her claws. The grave goddess was surprised. She didn't expect there to be another person in the heavenly tomb. And this person was none other than the old woman with the lamp. She was the old woman with the lamp that she had killed earlier. You're still alive? The grave goddess was in disbelief. She was sure that the old woman was completely dead after being imbued with that kind of power. During the entire process, she had been carefully observing the old woman with the evil eyes to make sure that the old woman she had captured was the real one and not a substitute or an illusion. But now, the old woman with the lamp that had appeared in front of her was exactly the same as the one she had killed earlier. Whether it was her expression, posture, clothes, appearance, or the way she had carried the lamp, everything seemed to have been replicated without the slightest difference. Of course, it's not that easy to enter the Tao ancestors' heavenly tomb. The old woman with the lamp laughed. Although I can't beat you, you can't do anything to me either. Even if I have to risk my life to block the entrance, it's fine. Let's see who can outlast the other. The grave goddess frowned. She was so infuriated by the old woman's words that her entire body was trembling. I don't believe that I can't kill you. Boom! Suddenly, an aura as vast as the ocean covered the heavens and covered the earth. It was like a storm that made one's face tremble. The old woman almost lost her balance, but her lantern was as steady as Mount Tai in the wind, not moving at all. Weaklings retreat. The grave goddess used the same trick again. This time, she opened her fingers, and 5 beams of divine light shot out from her fingertips like 5 sharp swords. They stabbed toward the old woman's head, chest, and other vital parts. Boom! The old woman's body exploded into pieces on the spot. This time, he added a little incantation to his move. It could destroy the person who was hit and prevent them from reincarnation. It could limit 99% of resurrection spells. The grave goddess felt that the old woman must have used some method to resurrect herself, or some Dharma treasure to replace her death. However, not long after the old woman exploded, from the crack in space, another old woman who looked exactly the same walked out with a lantern. The grave goddess was surprised. He pondered in his heart, could it be that this old woman had multiple births? There was a popular type of girl these days. The female protagonist would give birth to multiple births. For example, one child with 6 treasures. A domineering president knocks at the door. The scene in front of her made the grave goddess think of that. He looked at the old woman who kept coming back to life and could not help but think of the title of the book. One child with 10,000 treasures. An old woman with a lantern. This old woman couldn't have come out of a rock, right? Why? Are you feeling despair already? The old woman smiled. There are many people who want to kill me, but almost none of them can really kill me. You're not human? The grave goddess was also confused. He used his eye of evil to scan the tomb keeper in front of him. All of a sudden, he understood one thing. The real way to kill the old woman might not be through the old woman's body. The real body should be the old woman's lantern. Every time, the old woman would come out with a lantern. The grave goddess stared at the old woman and thought to herself. He thought of a method that was beyond resurrection spells, and it was not within the range of 99% of resurrection spells. It was also a spell that Tao Ancestor Wong had been researching but had not officially used. As an old rival of Tao Ancestor Wong, the grave goddess naturally knew something about it. After so many years, it was not surprising that this method was developed. Did that old fart impart the undying grasp to you? The grave god asked. Chapter 1551. Tao Ancestor Wong's indestructible grasp only existed in theory. It was a powerful and limitless resurrection technique. You could leave a seal by shaking hands, but by being killed over and over again, you could increase your resurrection speed. In the end, you could reach an indestructible state. That is, even if your entire body was smashed to pieces and only a pile of ash was left. It could also be restored to its original state within a few seconds. As expected, the tomb keeper of the heavenly tomb is no ordinary person. I've underestimated you. The grave god stared at the old woman with his purple eyes. He seemed to be deep in thought, as if he was planning something. As long as I'm here, you won't be able to take a single step into the heavenly tomb. The old woman sighed slightly. The next second, the flame in her hand suddenly grew, as if to represent her anger and unending battle intent. The temperature in the air continued to rise. The small lantern shone like a star, releasing endless light and heat. The surrounding space seemed to have been melted like window paper. Under the intense heat, holes were melted into them. These holes seemed to be in a mess, but in fact, they were arranged in a certain order. The old woman had arranged these holes into a formation and surrounded the grave god. She was trying to burn him with a sacred flame, since a large-scale attack could be easily blocked by the weakling scatter. Thus, there was no better choice than to adopt a sparrow strategy and launch attacks from all directions at the same time. The grave god's expression was still calm. He stared at the lantern in the old woman's hand for a few seconds and opened his mouth. With a ruah sound, he spat out a golden leaf sword from his mouth and shot it straight upwards. Then there was a buzzing sound. A golden rain of swords burst forth and rained down densely on him. Wherever the sword energy of the golden sword passed, all the holes the old woman had set up were cut open and disappeared. You can't escape now. The grave god chuckled. He didn't take the old woman seriously at all, since he already knew her resurrection method. He had already thought of a way to break it. His evil eyes weren't blind. He could tell that the old woman wasn't a normal human. If his judgment was correct, this old woman and the lantern in her hand were originally one body. This was the spirit of the lantern. The other party cleverly transferred the seal of the indestructible grip given to him by Tao Father Wong to his own lantern. As such, as long as he held onto the lantern, the engraving effect would activate continuously, allowing him to continuously resurrect. Perhaps this kind of roundabout behavior was for insurance, in order to prevent this engraving from falling into the hands of others. The grave god didn't expect to be so lucky as to bump into her. Old thing, everything you've done will eventually become my stepping stone. He sneered. In the next moment, he stretched out a finger and wrote something in the air. The old woman's expression changed drastically when she saw this. Death's decree. This was an extremely powerful killing curse technique. Furthermore, it was specifically targeted at artifact spirits. The old woman did not expect him to see through her identity. For the past 10,000 years, she had maintained her human form day and night, condensing a body of flesh and blood to make herself look more like a human. Who would have thought that the grave goddess would still be able to see through him? When a death decree was launched, the old woman could clearly feel that an invisible decree was forming in the space. There was no time to think at all. The grave god wrote a string of black words in the air, which turned into a long decree that pressed down on her. The universe shook. A loud explosion occurred. The old woman was surrounded by a ball of black light. The powerful power of the decree caused her body to tremble. She felt her blood evaporating. Not good. Her human form was about to collapse. Under the influence of this powerful law, his original appearance was revealed. You're just a junior in the end. The grave god sneered. In the next moment, he flipped his hand and pressed down. The old woman knelt down under this decree that targeted artifact spirits. She could no longer hold the lantern in her hand. She saw through the grave god's intentions and used the last bit of her strength to try and detonate herself. Although the indestructible grip engraving was a resurrection technique, if one chose to commit suicide, they would not be able to resurrect. The old woman knew that the grave god wanted to steal this engraving, so she decided to destroy it along with the engraving. Unfortunately, she was still one step too late. Just as the lantern left her hand, the engraving on the handle of the lantern actually fell off and flew towards the grave god's hand. Engraving transfer. The old woman was shocked. She didn't understand how the grave god did it. You're no longer of any use. The grave god happily received the engraving. He felt that his battle power was much stronger than before. He stared at the old woman and decided to give her a quick death. Wong. In the next second, the decree exploded and gave off a bright light. The old woman was instantly killed by the decree. She became dust in the universe. Now, no one can stop me from entering the heavenly tomb. The grave god smiled proudly. Then he stepped into the spatial crack that he had been looking forward to for a long time. The pain of being disintegrated by the curse was no different from being executed by 1,000 cuts. However, everything happened too suddenly. The grave god was so strong that the old woman didn't even have time to scream. But in reality, her scream was transmitted to other spaces. In the forsaken land of the gods, the bronze cat sitting on the forsaken pillar of the gods was leisurely licking its paws. Suddenly, the forsaken land of the gods started to shake. The bronze cat's eyes shrank in alarm. He quickly jumped down from the pillar and started to search for the source of the shaking. In the next second, he suddenly raised his head, because this wasn't an earthquake, but a vibration of the universe, causing the entire forsaken land of the gods to shake. This phenomenon, could it be? The bronze cat frowned. Then it saw that in the dark sky of the forsaken land of the gods, there was suddenly another bright light, like a meteor, rapidly streaking across the sky. An old woman whose entire body was ignited in God's fire screamed in pain as she approached the forsaken land of the gods. As expected, it was just as the bronze cat thought. This was the resonance of someone's soul being ignited and falling into the forsaken land of the gods. In reality, it was reminding him that a customer's soul was burning, and he hoped that he could save it. But the speed at which the old woman's soul was burning was too fast. The soul had yet to completely fall into the forsaken land of the gods. It had already been completely incinerated in midair. The bronze cat couldn't save it, even if he wanted to. How could this be? He could empathize with the old woman's despair. As the ruler of the forsaken land of the gods, he could only watch as his customer was burned to a crisp. This kind of mournful scream was a terrifying way of dying that exceeded the laws of the forsaken land of the gods. This made the bronze cat think of a person. Was it done by that person? The bronze cat still had lingering fears. He didn't expect that one day in the future, the heaven-defying evil god from back then would break out of the ground. That old woman with the lamp was the guardian of the heavenly tomb, but she was so easily killed by him. The bronze cat felt that this was very unusual. That evil god's reappearance was a big deal. He had to find someone to discuss this with as soon as possible. Otherwise, the universe would be thrown into chaos, but his movements were limited, and he could only move around within the forsaken land of the gods. How to send this warning to those who were still alive was a problem. Thus, at this moment, the bronze cat thought of another person. That's right, among all the regular customers of the forsaken land of the gods, there was a guy who left as he pleased. He didn't give it any face at all. This guy was none other than that stupid groundhog. It was said that after changing its body, this guy was now autistic because it was missing an important part. Even now, it was still in a petrified state. This was actually what the bronze cat wanted, because in this way, it could actually directly enter its soul and communicate with the groundhog. Even if it couldn't leave the forsaken land of the gods, it could still send a message. But the prerequisite was that after it sent the message, it had to ensure that the groundhog would wake up at this moment. The bronze cat sighed helplessly. Wasn't it just missing that thing? It didn't know what was so autistic about it. To a cat, not having reproductive functions could actually allow it to live longer. Thinking back to when it was castrated by Tao ancestor Wang, it didn't say anything. On the contrary, to the bronze cat, it was 2 less lumps of burden. Its entire body was made of bronze, and when it ran, the bottom of its body would constantly collide with the sound of bells. This was too awkward. Thus, it was better not to come. On the other side, within the astrolabe, Tian and the monk were playing chess in the living room. Tian stared at the chessboard and said, "After this game, you can leave." The monk smiled. "This game will probably take a long time." Peng Shiren poured tea on the side, like a bullied wife, and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Tian's residence was quite modern, and every room was extremely large, to the extent that one had to use spatial compression to enter the next room. There were many secrets regarding Tian in the residence. Before the monk could finish his tour, he was dragged into the living room by Tian to play chess. Although it was called a living room, it was actually a boundless ocean. It was said that Tian had spent a huge amount of money to build it. It could be used as a living room or as a swimming pool. There was a chessboard on the beach. And this was the place where the monk and Tian were playing chess. Tian glanced at the monk. "If you want to eat fruit, please get it from the tree over here." He basically didn't have any guests here, so he designed the living room like this. As for the problem of preparing snacks when guests came, Tian had also thought about it. He had planted an orchard on the beach. The fruits on it were always the freshest and most ripe, ready to be eaten at any time. The monk held a white chess piece and glanced back and forth at the chessboard. "Isn't it tiring to disguise yourself like this?" Tian frowned slightly. "Monk, what do you mean?" Monk Golden Lamp looked up and smiled. "You should have cultivated a human form long ago, right? In order to maintain your dignity, you still maintain your original appearance." Tian chuckled. "It's just a body. No matter how good-looking it is, it's useless to me." After all, he was an ancient figure, and he didn't care about the appearance that people cared about, because he was a person with no desires, and he had never thought about marrying a wife and having children. As a special Dharma spirit, although he had his own independent consciousness, he could also enjoy the rights of a normal living being. But the longer he lived, the less important things became. Tian frowned. "Monk, are you deliberately stalling for time?" He didn't expect the monk to ask this question and was a little displeased. He just wanted to send the monk away as soon as possible so that he could have some peace. "You have to let me think about it carefully. Every move is crucial." Tian's mouth twitched. This was the first time he had seen someone hesitate in a game of Gamoku. In fact, the monk was indeed stalling for time. Including the process of playing chess, he would add some small talk from time to time, all for the sake of some follow-up considerations. And when the white chess piece in the monk's hand finally fell, the seawater on the side suddenly began to boil. At this time, Tian looked at the sea and said, "A mighty figure has fallen." The seawater he had set up could capture the echoes of almighties in the universe. As long as an almighty died, a special wave would be captured by the seawater after their death. This sea of beginning is magical. The monk sighed. "It's not the first time you have seen it, right? Every day, every moment, even every minute and every second, someone will die." Tian said, "There's nothing magical about the fall of a mighty figure. Even a progenitor will become dust in the universe after death." At this time, Peng Shiren looked at the boiling seawater of the Sea of Beginning and seemed to suddenly think of something. His face immediately turned ugly. "You'd better behave. There's no future with that kind of evil god," Tian reminded coldly. "If the Tao ancestor knows about this, he won't let you off easily." "No, Brother Zheng, I thought of something bad." Peng Shiren's face turned pale. He tried to use the power of starlight to call his body. In the end, he was shocked to find that his body had been moved. It wasn't in the star devouring at all. "Oh no, the heavenly tomb has been discovered." Peng Shiren turned pale with fright. "What did you say?" Tian's expression instantly became serious. At this time, he looked at the monk as if he already knew something. He gritted his teeth and said, "Monk, are you in cahoots with that evil god? Did you already know something and deliberately stall for time here?" "You're only half right." At this time, Monk Jin Deng said with a smile, "Stalling for time is true. But how could this poor monk be in cahoots with that evil god?" "You already knew he was going to steal the heavenly tomb." Tian was agitated. "You never thought about the consequences. If that evil god gets the other half of his soul, how strong will he become? It's better to be stronger." The monk smiled. "What do you mean?" Tian was puzzled. "I came here to play chess with you because I wanted to stall you, so that you wouldn't be in such a hurry to die. As for the rest, Ling Jinren is here," the monk said. Tian's face was doubtful. "But that's an evil god." The monk was equally doubtful. "So what?" Tian, question mark. The monk, Ling Jinren, said that this person is a little stronger. "It'll also feel better when I draw him." Tian. On the other side, Wang Ling was indeed worried about two things. The first was that Leek Sasaki had informed the Rainbow Seven that they were going to hold an upper-class student exchange meeting at noon to celebrate 9 paths and the selection of a 5-member delegation. His head hurt at the thought of meeting people he didn't know again. Then he heard that he was going to bring a magic treasure for display at the meeting at noon. This gave Wang Ling an even bigger headache. He didn't lack magic treasures, but he was afraid that if he took one out, it would blind this group of people. Wang Ling had initially planned to bring his enchanted long johns over, but Wang Ming immediately rejected this proposal on the spot. "These long johns are amazing artifacts. Those people don't know what's good for them, so it'll be a waste." Wang Ming didn't want Wang Ling to bring any enchanted magic treasure, because if he did, it would be letting this group of people off lightly. These long johns had saved his life back then, and he still had an impression of it. How could this group of people be worthy of his little brother's enchanted long johns? Were they worthy? Thus, Wang Ling had no choice but to think of another way. He felt that it wouldn't work, and when the time came, it would be better to let Jinka sacrifice his body. Of all his magic treasures, it seemed that Jinka was the only one who looked relatively ordinary. Inside Wang Jibao's pants, almost all the magic treasures that the heavenly Tao had given him were shining, and one look was enough to tell that they weren't ordinary. If he took them out, they would be too dazzling and outstanding. But there was still some time before noon. Wang Ling felt that he might have a better idea in a while. At that moment, Wang Ming had gone to study the small box outside the black stone, and Wang Ling happened to be the only one left in Jiu Dao's dormitory. He felt that this was a good opportunity to study the Supreme Corpse winding painting. This was a primordial chaos weapon, and when it was opened, it had infinite power. Before opening it, he had made thorough preparations. He had used the King's Eye to isolate the space he was in and form a mirror space. This was an ability similar to a parallel space. If he opened the corpse winding painting here, it wouldn't affect reality even if something happened. Of course, he had hung Jinka on the dormitory door. It was true that the Peachwood sword had the ability to ward off evil, but this was in fact to prevent the powerful resentment emitted by the corpse winding painting from leaking out. These primordial experts had been suppressed inside a long time ago, when it had been opened in front of Wang Ling earlier. The sight of the wailing and struggling white bones inside had left a deep impression on Wang Ling. These primordial experts had been forcibly suppressed in the painting, and because they couldn't escape, they could only gradually grow old and die in a sitting posture becoming skeletons inside. How sorrowful was that? Although they couldn't be defined as ghosts, it was obvious that their resentment was extremely heavy. Wang Ling didn't open the corpse winding painting to its full extent, which was at least 10,000 li wide. He had only opened a small part, about 2 meters or so, but that dense, murderous aura already assailed his nostrils. What a powerful painting! Wang Ying was also alarmed by the aura of the corpse winding painting, and took the initiative to appear next to Wang Ling, crossing his arms. He stared at the white bones in the painting. It was only 2 meters wide, but there were already hundreds of white bones inside. How many primordial experts had this corpse-winding painting suppressed for so long? Wang Ling and Wang Ying sighed with emotion in their hearts. Primordial experts sounded like very rare existences. But compared with the vastness of a universe, these primordial experts were nothing more than a drop in the ocean. These primordial experts had been waiting for the day when the corpse-winding painting would change hands and fall into the hands of someone who wasn't as strong as them. They had been waiting in the corpse-winding painting for an opportunity. Gu's existence could be considered a psychological shadow for them. That extremely ugly Dharma body spirit looked terrifying and was also terrifyingly powerful. They didn't want to be directly reduced to ashes when they got out. But now, after Wang Ling had opened the corpse-winding painting to 2 meters, the scene in front of them made some people think that their opportunity had come. The corpse-winding painting has changed hands. Here's our chance. A spotlessly white, bony hand grasped the opportunity and stretched out impatiently. There's actually someone who's courting death stretching out his hand. Amused, Wang Ying also stretched out her hand and warmly shook hands with the white bones. Gotcha! This skeletal hand was directly crushed into powder by Wang Ying. Sorry, I used too much strength. Wang Ying apologized without any sincerity. Sure enough, with this one shake, the remaining white bones in the painting became a lot more well-behaved, and no one dared to stretch out their hands again. On the side, Wang Ling rolled his eyes at Wang Ying. Jingbai had chopped the corpse-winding painting to pieces with his sword earlier so that these primordial experts in the painting wouldn't be traumatized. When he had restored the corpse-winding painting, he had used his power of sight to erase the scene where Jingbai had chopped the corpse. That was to say, all the primordial experts in the corpse-winding painting now had no idea what on earth had happened. When they opened the painting now, they saw Wang Ling and Wang Ying, 2 youths who looked like twins. They had thought that their chance to escape had finally come. In the end, Wang Ying's grip instantly revealed his savage nature, and this group of people were so frightened that they trembled in the painting. After a few minutes, an old voice rang out from the painting. Although the voice was also trembling, it sounded very bold. Who on earth are you? Where's Mr. Gu? He mercilessly imprisoned you in the painting, and you still call him Mr. Gu? Wang Ying was amused. This was clearly an old case of Stockholm Syndrome. Simply put, this was the victim's psychological dependence on the perpetrator. The world in this painting was born from chaos, and it can get whatever you want. It's just that it's all fake. This old man was one of the first to come in. I've long since accepted my current situation, the old voice said, but there are also some people who don't want to live in this fake world. I see. Then who are you? Wang Ying nodded and asked. My name is Zhang Qi, and my courtesy name is Zistiel, the old voice replied. Through the king's eye, Wang Ling saw the old man's life story. Zhang Qi, also called Zhang Zistiel, he was actually an ancient godly thief. He could be considered as a weirdo among the ancient powerhouses. No wonder he had adapted so quickly to the predicament of being trapped in the corpse-winding painting. It turned out that he had been locked up many times because he liked to steal other people's things. Wang Ling wondered if it was because people who liked to steal felt like they had returned home when they were locked up in a prison or something like that. So this was an ancestral skill. Wang Ying, then why were you imprisoned? This was in fact a very awkward question. For people who had been imprisoned in the corpse-winding painting, almost everyone had a past they couldn't bear to look back on. Naturally, it was because I stole Dao Ancestor Wang's things, but this old man returned them after using them, Zhang Zistiel said after a moment of silence. And then you were imprisoned. That's right, that old thing. He was too unreasonable. What on earth did you steal? A lonely woman. I heard she was the king of the god world. Chapter 1552. Wang Ling and Wang Ying felt that they had learned something incredible. It could only be said that in some sense, this Zhang Zizi was also a talent. Furthermore, he was very lucky. Hearing this, the two of them were dazed for a long time. The main thing was that they never expected to find someone greener than Loopy Toad nowadays. There was no need to doubt the feelings between Tao Ancestor Wang and the old god. Everything they had seen in the secret room of the heavenly Tao magic cube on divine Tao Star back then, and everything that had been left behind, recorded their deep feelings. Thus, hearing Zhang Zizi talk about this, Wang Ling and Wang Ying felt even more flustered by Tao Ancestor Wang's greenness. But there were two sides to every coin. Zhang Zizi still had something to say about what had happened back then. They weren't married. What this old man did wasn't kind, but it wasn't just my problem. A person and an object are different. This old man stole so many things. Those things were dead, but the people were alive. If they didn't agree, they could have pushed this old man away. Zhang Zizi snickered. As long as they weren't married, this old man was still competing fairly. Furthermore, it was consensual to begin with. After I stole them, didn't I return them? That's sophistry, Wang Ying said disdainfully. Think whatever you want. Zhang Zizi snickered. I still remember her light yellow dress and fluffy hair back then. Unfortunately, it was a cup of green tea. This old man wanted to take this opportunity to warn Tao Ancestor. Who knew that old thing would be so ruthless? Wang Ling, feelings were actually very complicated. Wang Ling had never understood these things. He was too lazy to understand them in detail. There were times when feelings were complicated, and Wang Ling felt that they were even more troublesome than functions. It was like a circuit diagram made up of complicated wires, and he didn't know where to start. Thus, without knowing the whole picture, Wang Ling was too lazy to comment on these things. All he wanted to know was whether or not any of the ancient experts in the painting knew about the matters of the primordial that he wanted to know. Using the king's eye, Wang Ling scanned the pile of bones in the picture. Including Zhang Zizi, the average combat strength of everyone in the picture was at the ancestor realm, as Wang Ling had expected. That was Peng Shiren's combat power, and if it was converted to the number of nucleons, on average, the people in the shrouded corpse painting had 60 cores of combat power. Nucleus, or nucleus for short. This was the measurement of combat strength after the ancestor realm. The power of one nucleus could easily destroy a planet and kill anyone below the progenitor realm. Tao gods were just ants. The true powerhouses of the past were indeed this terrifying. These people were similar to Tao Ancestor Wang. They were all geniuses and geniuses that had existed since the beginning of the cultivation world. If they were placed in the current era, they would be famous and illustrious existences. How could there still be a place for those Tao God clan leaders in the God realm? Looking at the supreme corpse winding up painting in front of him, Wang Ling actually had very complicated feelings. That was because in this universe, there were actually many ancient powerhouses. But unfortunately, they were all suppressed. Moreover, the reasons for the suppression were all bizarre. The Zhang Zipei in front of him could be considered a lively person. The other skeletons seemed to be afraid of him, and only Zhang Zijin dared to talk to him. Wang Ling felt that this was a good starting point. You were suppressed because you had an affair, but what about the others? Wang Ying asked. Zhang Zipei clearly knew a lot. When he heard this, he couldn't help laughing. I know a lot of gossip, but can you match it up? We're all skeletons now. My master's eye power can automatically fill in the picture and trace your original appearance. I see. Zhang Zipei rubbed his chin. He had noticed Wang Ling's eyes earlier. He had some guesses in his heart, but he didn't say them out loud. He seemed uncertain. There were also some things that he couldn't say. Following Wang Ying's question, he pointed at the other skeletons and said, "His name is Du Juanji, and he used to be a scholar. Back then, he complained that Tao Ancestor Wang and Old God were dating, and that they might not be able to have children due to racial segregation. So Dao ancestor Wang suppressed them. Later, a lot of facts showed that Du Juanji was actually right. When I had an affair back then, I didn't even use a small umbrella. This is Zhong Suinyan Shun, and he used to be one of my investors. Investor? When I didn't have much money, I would pick on a few rich and powerful people. If he was an investor, then what was he? Zhang Zipei snickered. What did he do this time? Could it be related to old God? Wang Ying said, I heard that when he was playing chess with Dao ancestor Wang, he secretly took a move when Dao ancestor Wang wasn't paying attention. Dao ancestor Wang found out. The two of them argued. In the end, Dao ancestor Wang used the corpse wrapping picture to suppress them. According to Zhang Zipei, this Zhongxinyan Shun and Dao ancestor Wang actually had a pretty good relationship back then. The two of them even called each other brothers on many occasions. It was just that sometimes, the better the relationship, the fiercer the quarrel. When it came to a fight between the higher-ups, it was very normal for one's hands to be off target. After listening to Zhang Zipei's story, whether it was Wang Ling or Wang Ying, they were both slightly puzzled, given Dao ancestor Wang's personality. After he had calmed down, he should have considered letting the people out again, but Dao ancestor Wang hadn't done so. Why on earth was that? Could it be that this corpse wrapping picture could only be entered and not exited? Even Dao ancestor Wang himself didn't know how to break the picture, just as the two of them were puzzled. Zhang Zipei pointed at another person and said, Mao Yongqi. This person was Dao ancestor Wang's #1 fan back then. He even suppressed his fans? Wang Ying was startled. I don't think Dao ancestor Wang can be completely blamed for this. Zhang Zipei spread his hands and smiled. In modern terms, the cultivation fandom phenomenon was actually very serious back then. In ancient times, there was a primordial ranking list, and everyone in the cultivation world could rank the seniors they liked on it. I heard that Mao Yongqi recruited troops and hired a water army for Dao ancestor Wang to rank at the top of the list, leaving behind the #2 by several magnitudes. And then they quarreled? Of course. Zhang Zipei said, someone started scolding Dao ancestor Wang for relying on his status as a founding member of the cultivation world to take advantage of his seniority. And in order to protect Dao ancestor Wang's image, Mao Yongqi verbally battled with the Confucians and scolded everyone. Instead, it caused Dao ancestor Wang's reputation to become even more notorious. His image was destroyed, his endorsement was withdrawn, and his reputation was affected as a result. Naturally, Dao ancestor Wang wanted to settle the score with him. Hearing this, Wang Ling and Wang Ying were silent. What a cruel truth at that moment. Wang Ling sighed emotionally in his heart. The reason why there were so few foreigners was because they often courted death by challenging extreme sports. The reason why there were so few ancient powerhouses was because they had offended Dao ancestor Wang. Wasn't there someone who was suppressed because he offended Dao ancestor Wang? Of course there was. Zhang Zipei said, see, this person was called Sheng Jinyang. He didn't have any grudges with Dao ancestor Wang, but he made a bet with Dao ancestor Wang that he had a way to enter the corpse wrapping picture and come out. And then, there was no then. Chapter 1553. After listening to Zhang Ziqin's introduction of the other people, Wang Ling and Wang Ying could more or less analyze Dao ancestor Wang's temper and character. They were surprised to find that Dao ancestor Wang was actually a particularly narrow-minded person. Could a grandmaster of the cultivation world not tolerate even a speck of sand in his eyes? Wang Ling was suspicious of this. Listening to all kinds of bizarre reasons for being suppressed, he felt that he shouldn't just listen to these people's side of the story. These people had all been ancient experts who had once commanded the world. After being suppressed in this corpse picture for so long, there was no guarantee that they would be mentally healthy. It was inevitable that their minds would become distorted, which would distort the truth. In Wang Ling's experience, as long as two parties were involved, you absolutely couldn't just listen to one side. If you easily believed one side and were eager to pick a side, then in the end, once the situation reversed, the only one who would be embarrassed would be yourself. Wang Ling had seen this kind of thing too many times in the current internet age, let alone in ancient times. There were indeed a lot of people who exaggerated things in order to attract other people's attention. A while ago, Wang Ling had even seen a female parent who had splashed red ink on her daughter's school uniform because she had a disagreement with a teacher and said that the teacher was abusing her daughter at school. Why was it that the most basic trust between people was gone now? Wang Ling felt that he should look for the reason in these people. Everyone who consumes generously should reflect on themselves. On this side, Wang Ling was deep in thought. He heard Zhang Ziqin suddenly laugh in the picture. Dao Ancestor Wang's actions are hard to fathom. People like us who were suppressed in here sometimes wonder if we're really seeing Dao Ancestor Wang. I know that you must think that Dao Ancestor Wang is the creator of cultivation and that a grand family shouldn't be so narrow-minded. But sometimes, facts speak louder than words. If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do. Speaking up to this point, Zhang Ziqin seemed to remember something and then said, "That's right, you can ask Old God about this." Wang Ling and Wang Ying, seeing that Wang Ying's expression wasn't right, Zhang Ziqin seemed to instantly understand something. In that instant, even his voice was a lot lower. "Has she perished?" "Yes." Wang Ying nodded. Speaking of this, both Wang Ling and Wang Ying felt a little embarrassed. After all, the fall of the old god was related to them. Lotus Sun had struck him to death not long ago. The grass on the grave was probably several zhang high. For some reason, when Wang Ling restored Zhang Zipei's original appearance through the king's eye, he saw a deep sense of melancholy on his face when he mentioned old god. Wang Ling also saw this scene clearly. Although he didn't have the ability of the king's eye, as long as Wang Ling activated visual sharing, Wang Ling's shadow could clearly see the scene in front of him, although he wasn't too sure. But Wang Ying had an intuition that the relationship between Zhang Zipei and the old god might be more complicated than he had imagined. Although Zhang Zizi's side of the story made people think that the relationship between them was just a one-night stand in ancient times. But the expression on his face couldn't lie. Skeletons couldn't make out their expressions, and Zhang Zizi, like most of the people here, had forgotten how to manage their expressions after becoming a skeleton. Thus, Wang Ling was able to capture this scene now. Anyway, Zhang Zipei was a man with a story. There were so many ancient realm experts trapped in the corpse wrapping diagram. Given Wang Ling's temperament, he couldn't be bothered to continue looking for other candidates. His thoughts coincided with Wang Ying's. He had already decided to dig out some information from Zhang Zipei in front of him. "We want to know a few things. You just need to answer what you know. My master can rescue you. What do you think of this deal?" Wang Ying asked. He had thought that Zhang Zipei would happily agree. Unexpectedly, the other party just shook his head. "An ancient godly thief like me can't see the light of day. Whether I get out or not doesn't mean much to me." "Then what do you want?" Wang Ying asked. "My request is actually very simple. If you want to get information from me, I'll give it to you. If you want information from me, then help me look for descendants of my bloodline." Zhang Zipei said, "I've been suppressed here for too long, but I clearly remember that I have 3 sons. If they can smoothly continue my bloodline, there should still be descendants of mine in this world." "Are you so sure they're still alive?" "To be honest, I'm not too sure." Zhang Zipei snickered. After all, it's been too long. Looking for his descendants. This was Zhang Zipei's only wish now. "Hee, I just wanted to satisfy my curiosity," Zhang Zipei said. Zhang Zizi whispered, "If my bloodline can continue smoothly, I'm sure that the cultivation of the descendants who are still alive in this world won't be too high." "You're an ancient expert," Wang Ying said. "So what if I'm an ancient expert? Being suppressed in the corpse picture, I've already lost the chance to pass on my legacy to my descendants, even if they can continue my bloodline. Without the inheritance of the primitive orthodoxy, generation after generation will only become weaker and weaker." Zhang Zipei said, "Since your master has the ability to get me out of this corpse picture, it shouldn't be difficult to find my descendants." "Of course." Wang Ying nodded. At this point, the negotiations between the two sides had come to a successful conclusion. Wang Ling had received a new task: find Zhang Zipei's descendants in exchange for information. This indeed wasn't a difficult task for Wang Ling. He just needed to use his power of sight to track the bloodline later. Zhang Zipei knew that his answer was actually a little rude, because he himself didn't know if his bloodline could be passed on. If there was no one to pass on, he actually had nothing to say. Somewhat curious, Zhang Zipei looked at Wang Ying and Wang Ling and said, "If I don't have descendants, then this deal will be considered a failure." Although Zhang Zipei knew a lot about ancient matters and many secrets, he actually didn't want to say them out loud. This was the law of heavenly Tao and equivalent exchange. Wang Ling also understood this principle. Zhang Zipei felt that the chances of this happening were slim, and it was just a casual request. But at that moment, Wang Ying looked at him solemnly. "Don't worry, my master will definitely find them. Even if he doesn't, he can still help you. Even if I have to dig up a grave and reincarnate, I'll find one for you." A lot of question marks instantly popped up in Zhang Zipei's mind. Actually, he had long since noticed that there was something strange about this youngster in front of him. He had opened the corpse-wrapping picture with his bare hands, and with his strength alone, he had suppressed this group of ancient experts to the point where they didn't dare to say anything. And most importantly, the other party could actually violate the law of heavenly Tao, which Tao ancestor Wang had set up. What kind of person was this youngster? At that moment, Zhang Zipei stole a glance at Wang Ling's red eyes, as if deep in thought. It was almost noon on Friday, December 18th. The upper-class student exchange meet that Leek Sasaki had mentioned earlier was about to begin. There was a small forest built into Jiudao and high school trench, and this time, Area S exchange meet would be held in this forest hut. It's up ahead. Following Leek Sasaki through the long cobblestone path, the number 60 high group finally saw the slightly fantastical forest hut, which was built directly on top of a big tree. This was a 1,000-year-old tree, and its base was so huge that more than 50 people wouldn't be able to wrap their arms around it. The branches on it were dense and crisscrossed, and the noon sun seeped through the gaps between the leaves, leaving behind fragments of light on the ground that moved with the wind. According to Leek Sasaki, this forest hut had originally been used as a place for special training. It required the dean's office's approval before it could be used. The Rainbow Seven Suns choosing this place as the venue this time could be considered to have fully utilized the capitalist advantage of Area S students. This was originally a very tranquil place. Wang Ling didn't really dislike his surroundings, and instead liked them a little. It was just that with so many people around, his mood wasn't as pleasant anymore. "Can we really do this?" Jiayin dropped her forehead into her hand. She was wearing Lotus Sun's dress, and her face was red with embarrassment. Because of her profession, it had been a long time since she had worn a dress in front of outsiders. She usually dressed more neutrally when she went out, and the only time she wore a dress was when she met people she knew. But now that Lotus Sun was pretending to be Ryoko Kwamiya, Jiayin had no choice but to pretend to be Lotus Sun to fill in for Lotus Sunday. In number 60 high school, everyone's eyes were still on the 3 students who were going to be the exchange students this time. On the other hand, Jiayin, who appeared as an assistant teacher, would not attract too much attention. "I think this is pretty good. You're usually so pretentious. It's good to change up once in a while." Wang Ming grinned and encouraged her on the side. But Jiayin was still hesitant. On one hand, she was shy. On the other hand, she felt that the circuit diagram was starting to become a little confusing. There's nothing to be afraid of. In any case, if anyone comes to talk to you, just politely decline with a smile on your face, Wang Ming said, sounding very practiced. Hearing this, Wang Ling and Lotus Sun vaguely sensed that the atmosphere wasn't right. "If other boys come looking for me, are you sure you won't be angry?" Jiayin asked again before entering the house. It wasn't until later that Wang Ling and Wang Ming realized that this was actually a suicide question, but that was Wang Ming's personality. Because he was used to being a straight man, he didn't think too much about it. In the face of Jiayin's question, he didn't even think to use the brain deduction technique to confirm the answer, because he felt that this was a small matter, and it wasn't worth it for the two of them to get into an argument over it. Thus, Wang Ming answered without hesitation. Why should I be angry? It's an act to begin with. It's an act, but you clearly know that I'm not wrong. Jai Yin said. Wang Ming? Question mark. It wasn't easy to understand a girl's mind. Before they fell in love, Wang Ming wouldn't have believed this. But now, he believed it. When he gradually began to realize how strange this question of Jai Yin's was, by the time he used the brain deduction technique, it would already be too late. Because there were only two paths in front of him. And no matter which one he chose, it would be his fault in the end. If he got angry, that would be exactly what Jai Yin wanted. This guy just wanted to see him get jealous. But in the end, he would be labeled as petty. If he didn't get angry, the consequences would be even more serious. He would be labeled as someone who didn't care about his girlfriend. Falling in love was a science. Sometimes, seemingly simple problems were in fact much more complicated than scientific principles. Thus, Wang Ming's heart was now full of regret. He regretted that he hadn't straightaway settled Jai Yin 2 days ago when he and Jai Yin had been alone in Zhu Dao's dormitory. The little girl had watched too many TV dramas and liked to let her imagination run wild. For some inexplicable reason, the scene fell into an awkward silence. Wang Ming had an answer in his mind, but in the end, both answers would be labeled, and they weren't the answers Wang Ming wanted to see. Thus, Wang Ming, who really didn't know how to deal with this matter, sank into silence. This directly caused the atmosphere to sink into an even more intense depression. Rongchan, were they like this before? Leek Sasaki asked Lotus-san, who was disguised as Ryoko Kwamiya, in a very low voice. I don't know either. Lotus-san also didn't know how to answer Leek Sasaki. The main thing was that this was the first time the girl had encountered a cold war between couples, and she didn't have much experience in love. She didn't know how to deal with this at all. Seeing that they were about to reach the wooden hut, Lotus-san tried to change the subject and change the atmosphere. In the end, Leek Sasaki suddenly said, Hey, if you quarrel at the head of the bed and reconcile at the end, I think the two of you should calm down. We're about to face a formidable enemy. We can't fight among ourselves, can we? Who's husband and wife with him? As soon as Leek Sasaki said this, Wang Ming and Jai Yin folded their arms in unison and turned their faces to the left and right. Leek Sasaki, Wang Ling, Lotus-san. In Wang Ming's view, Jai Yin was deliberately looking for a quarrel. This was all an act, wasn't it? Why did she have to think so much about it? He felt that, in the end, it was still a matter of trust. Jai Yin didn't trust herself. That was what annoyed him the most. On the other side, Jai Yin couldn't help feeling vexed by Wang Ming's silence. She actually knew that she was looking for trouble, but couldn't this guy just give her a way out? What was this silence supposed to mean? It was obvious that he didn't care about her at that moment. The two of them were vexed over their own matters. Wang Ling and Lotus-san hadn't expected the situation to actually develop to this point. They had thought that there couldn't be anything worse than the current situation. But Wang Ming's next words directly blew Jai Yin's mind. Before entering the wooden hut, the more Wang Ming thought about it, the angrier he got, and he blurted out, If you want to think that way, there's nothing I can do. As soon as he said this, Jai Yin's face instantly turned ugly. When Lotus-san heard this, she knew that something wasn't right. If you want to think that way, there's nothing I can do. This was one of the top 10 sentences that girls hated most from boys. According to the latest ranking list data, this sentence was ranked 3rd in terms of overall votes. Chapter 1554. Jai Yin actually wasn't that angry to begin with. But the man in front of her wasn't romantic at all, and had actually said something like this before entering the wooden hut, which instantly made her depressed. When Wang Ming blurted out, If you want to think that way, there's nothing I can do, Wang Ling, Leek Sasaki, and Lotus-san all felt the temperature around them drop a few degrees. Leek Sasaki looked like he was watching a show as he explained to Wang Ling on the side. Queen Lang-san, we absolutely can't say this. This is number 3 in the top 10 lines that girls hate most from boys. Wang Ling was about to ask what the first and second lines were. But Leek Sasaki continued. The first is, I was wrong, all right? The second is, Didn't I tell you earlier? To be honest, Wang Ling actually didn't really know where on earth this specific ranking was coming from. However, just listening to these words would indeed give people a feeling of disgust. Sure enough, having a partner was the most troublesome thing. As expected, it was more important to study hard in high school. Wang Ling had never thought about getting into a flashy relationship and was content with his current situation. Although it was a little different from his ideal, peaceful life, at least it wasn't as troublesome as he had imagined. In Wang Ling's view, men and women in love were just asking for it. Why bother? It was actually quite good to be single. At least at this stage, it could be said that Wang Ling didn't have any thoughts about this. Similarly, given his personality, he felt that in a few years, or even 10 years, he wouldn't have a girlfriend. Why did he need a girlfriend? Wang Ling didn't understand. In his view, this was a form of restraint. So, it was impossible to find one. Even if he, Wang Ling, was lonely for the rest of his life, starved to death, or jumped down from here. By the way, what magic treasure did Queen Langsan bring this time? As his thoughts swirled in his mind, Leek Sasaki's words once again broke the dead silence. He was a smart man, and intended to ease the tension a little. The main thing was that the current situation was too tense. Even a blind person could tell that something was wrong with Wang Ming and Jia Yin's quarrel. She was the first to take out her magic treasure. It was an azure gem that lay quietly in her palm, giving off the aura of the ocean. Chive Sasaki was surprised. He looked over and found that there was the sound of rolling waves in the round gem. These can't be Dragon Balls, right? Chive Sasaki began to display the unique imagination of Sun Islanders. This is a Sea Kingdom magic ball. It's a magic treasure made from precious crystals from the deep sea and precious herbs. When worn on the body, it could delay aging and maintain vitality. It can also help with sleep and rest at night. Lotus Sun said, "If you can't memorize the book, just put this thing in your mouth and recite what you saw. It has the same effect as the memory bread." Amazing, Leek Sasaki praised. Because he knew that Lotus Sun was playing Ryoko Kamiya. In order to ensure that he didn't slip up, he avoided using prefixes like Ryoko-chan or Ryoko-chan. Now that there were so many eyes, if he accidentally said something wrong, then everything would be exposed. The Sea Kingdom Magic Ball was originally Lotus Sun's trump card. But for this girl who had already seen the world, this magic treasure wasn't so valuable anymore. Its current effect might not even be as good as the White Rabbit creamy candies that Wang Ling had given her. But it was absolutely enough to intimidate these high school students on this occasion. For the students who were still studying, this Sea Kingdom Magic Ball was a godly learning artifact. An immortal-grade magic artifact was something that students would fight over, but these things were just toys in Wang Ling's eyes. Some of them couldn't even be considered toys. So what if they were holy weapons or world-defying magic artifacts? Wang Ling could easily fabricate those things. Then, what treasure did Langsan bring this time? Lotus Sun asked at that moment. Wang Ling was dazed for a moment when he spoke. The main thing was that Lotus Sun and Ryoko Kamiya really weren't that different from each other, from their appearance to their voice. Even her breasts had been further optimized, becoming very flat. In this aspect alone, she was already 99% similar to Ryoko Kamiya. He casually put his hand in his pocket. Wang Ling was feeling around for the things he had brought. He had originally planned to bring Jinka along with him, but later, he had found something that was even more low-key than Jinka's. This was a peachwood branch he had brought from a peach forest in the Sword King world. It was Jinka's birthplace. It was also a consumable material that could be used to repair Jinka's body once it was worn out. Leek Sasaki thought Wang Ling was joking, but when he focused his eyes on it carefully, in a split second, he actually fell into a momentary trance. What on earth is this? Leek Sasaki felt that all his attention had been drawn to this little peachwood branch, although he couldn't say exactly why. However, Chike Sasaki could feel a special spirituality coming from this peach branch. The spirit power flowing out of the peachwood branch was like the hand of a fairy, gently caressing Leek Sasaki's heart. It seemed to be able to completely calm a person's thoughts, and had a strange power to calm the ears. The moment Wang Ling took out the peachwood branch, the atmosphere around them seemed to instantly ease up a lot. Jinka had told Wang Ling earlier that the spirit power and aura emitted by this peachwood branch could make people feel peaceful and calm. Furthermore, it had the effect of reflect on yourself 3 times a day. Now, that Wang Ling had experienced it for himself, he finally knew what it meant. This was because of the peachwood branch. At that moment, Wang Ming and Jai Yin had both started to reflect on themselves. They were regretting their impulsive remarks just now. The peachwood branch's ability to reflect on yourself 3 times a day was too strong and exceeded Wang Ling's expectations. In less than a few seconds, these two people who had been in a Cold War and didn't look like they would be able to reconcile for the time being instantly faced each other and spoke in unison. I have something to say to you. I have something to say to you. You first. You first. Seeing this, Leek Sasaki hurriedly led them to the foot of the wooden hut up ahead. At a time like this, he thought it would be better to leave them alone. In the end, it was also at that moment that Wang Ling saw Wang Ming and Jai Yin hugging each other from a distance. They've reconciled. That's great. Lotus Sun was secretly happy. But the truth was that the Rainbow Seven Sons gang members in the tree house happened to see this scene. President, big news. Come and see. A new member of the Purple Maple Club cried out from the window. What's all the fuss about? Then, following this member's direction, President Moriyama Keed of the Purple Maple Club saw this scene from a distance. Then, he wore the emoji of an old man looking at his phone in the subway. I remember this Lotus Sun. Doesn't she like that Queen Lang sang? Why is she suddenly hugging Wang Xiao Air? I know, President. They all believe in Wang. So, we must have made a mistake. It didn't matter who Lotus Sun liked. At that moment, Moriyama Keed was already completely confused. The rich circle was really messy. Chapter 1555. As the saying went, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will emerge victorious in every battle. In order to grasp this Ho Lang Sang's weakness, Sun Shanfeng had investigated a lot of things. Many of them were rumors on the internet, and their veracity had yet to be determined. But as the saying went, public opinion could melt gold. As long as all these rumors were listed down and verified by the comprehensive search rate and the witnesses found, it was basically possible to determine whether the information was true or false. But just as Sun Shanfeng wanted to summarize the information before today's high society student exchange meet, something very strange had happened. All the information he had gathered on Ho Lang Sang had disappeared. Moreover, before the meeting began, he couldn't remember anything about Ho Lang Sang at all. His memory was a mess, like a mosaic of paste. What the hell? Feeling helpless, Sun Shanfeng could only focus on this part of the information. Based on the summary of the information, Lotus Sun had a good impression of this Ho Lang Sang. Sun Shanfeng thought he could make a big deal out of this at the exchange meet. He only needed to make that Ho Lang Sang unable to get off the stage. In this regard, he felt that he could look for inspiration from the recently circulated Dragon King's son-in-law, as well as that war god with a crooked mouth. Ho Lang Sang was an ordinary kid with a poor family background. Furthermore, he didn't have any talent. So many people in 9 Paths and Class S had already reached the Golden Core stage in Grade 1. How could a Foundation Establishment cultivator like him strut around? In 9 Paths and High School's Chieba, Sun Shanfeng had already arranged for some people from Purple Maple Club to organize posts. Why is a poor Ho Lang Sang favored by a rich woman? Do you think you're the Azure Dragon King? Talk about how to be a pretty boy and attract a rich woman to keep you as a mistress. With this method, you won't have to worry about the rest of your life. A Foundation Establishment cultivator can also participate in the High Society Student Exchange Meet in Zone S. I've never seen such a shameless person. Epic disgrace. 9 Paths and High School Sun Island is #1 in the world, actually allowing foreign aid to join the delegation. Are you worthy? It was Sun Shanfeng who had come up with these very clickbait posts. Unfortunately, if it wasn't for the urgency of the matter, he felt that it would have been a good advertisement. With these posts and the exchange meeting, everyone had to bring a magic treasure with them. But Sun Shan Keed really wanted to see what on earth Wang Ling would take out. He had been gleefully waiting for the exchange meet to start, just waiting to see Wang Ling make a fool of himself. In the end, the scene in front of him completely messed up Moriyama Keed. No, did I lose my memory? I shouldn't have lost my memory, right? Lotus Sun clearly likes that Bakalang saying. Why is she hugging the guy called Wang Xiao? Sun Shan Keed felt very uncomfortable. Guild leader, what should we do now? When the others saw this scene, they were at a loss as to what to do. Don't panic. Moriyama Maple pretended to be calm. In fact, he didn't know what to do either, but since the plan had been set, it was too late to change it now. He could only continue to act according to the original plan. A few minutes later, number 60 High School's Wang Ling and the others were led into the treehouse by Chive Sasaki. The living room in the treehouse was very spacious. In order to accommodate the exchange meeting, it had been rearranged. Long dining tables were joined together and divided into 3 rows, each of which was filled with Sun Island's local delicacies, desserts, and drinks. All of them were cultivation food. As soon as Wang Ling entered, the noisy scene instantly quieted down, and a lot of people looked in his direction. After a few seconds of silence, whispers of discussion began to ring out nearby. Most of them were actually discussing Wang Ling based on the marketing style posts that Moriyama Keed had posted. Led by Moriyama Keed, the fact that 9 Paths and the delegation had allowed an outsider to join had indeed aroused dissatisfaction among some students in Area S. The most important thing was that Wang Ling's participation had been approved by the student union. Moriyama Keed had set up such a big game of chess. It looked like a revenge operation against Wang Ling. However, his real goal was still the 9th Path and the student council. As long as they operated well this time and pulled down Chive Sasaki, the president of the student union who was in the limelight, 9 Paths, and the high school would be completely under the control of their Rainbow 7 Sons gang. As a matter of fact, Leek Sasaki and Sparrow had long since seen through such a plot. The moment they saw Moriyama Keed, Chive Sasaki and Moriyama Keed looked at each other from a distance. Their seemingly calm expressions were in fact surging undercurrents. Chive Sasaki, this time, I'll definitely pull you down. Moriyama Keed, this time, I'll definitely let you join the cult. As their gazes met, the two of them communicated their thoughts to each other. On the side, Wang Ling could hear everything clearly. Wang Ling knew that Chive Sasaki's message was actually aimed at the student union. In the other party's eyes, Wang Ling was nothing more than cannon fodder that could be used. Wang Ling actually didn't take this childish behavior to heart. Even a brat who lacked education had a chance to turn over a new leaf. Look at number 59 High School's Tang Jingze and He Buffeng. At the very beginning, they had also racked their brains trying to target him. And now, it was said that they had all joined the Gray Sect. Wang Ling actually didn't reject this behavior of the Gray Sect's fan club. Back then, because of Crispy Noodles' substitute essay, Wang Ling had accidentally packaged him as a little genius at writing essays. Wang Ling felt that this was something he could use to his advantage. At the very least, he could divert some people's attention. He could make those people not focus on his true battle strength. As the saying went, a scholar was useless. What Wang Ling's essay had given him was this kind of delicate jade-faced scholar skin. On the contrary, it made him even more unremarkable. The people in the Gray Sect's fan club were relatively more cultured and could help him cover up. The main thing was that the cult leader was Lotus Sunday. This instead made Wang Ling feel exceptionally at ease. As for those fake posts online, Wang Ling didn't take them to heart. He didn't need to deal with this matter now. Sparrow could handle it on her own. Wang Ming had already used Old V's identity as the top hacker in the hacker circle to accept Sparrow as his disciple. Currently, Wang Ming had full control over the situation on Sparrow's side. Thus, it was already very obvious who would be the real winner in the end in Sun Shanfeng's scheme. What was more, the Rainbow 7 brothers now had Lon Lon Lu, the new president of Blue Face Society, whom Feng had roped in as a mole. It was said that after Lon Lon Lu joined the Rainbow 7 brothers, he had privately won over several other presidents. That was to say, if Lotus Sun stepped forward as the head of the Gray Sect and shouted "Rainbow, Seven Brothers disband," perhaps the entire venue, Sun Shan Feng would be the only one left. Thus, Wang Ling was exceptionally calm in the face of the menacing Sun Shan Feng. When Wang Ling stepped into the venue, he saw a lot of puzzled expressions on the faces of the people around him. In the air, the background music of "Little Friend, Do You Have a Lot of Question Marks?" seemed to be faintly discernible. It was only at that moment that Zhai Yin remembered that she was now playing the role of Lotus Sun, and she had actually hugged Wang Ming in front of so many people just now. The situation turned awkward for a moment. Rong, I'm sorry. I was so excited just now that I forgot. Zhai Yin immediately apologized to Lotus Sun in the independent team's mental voice channel that the members of number 60 high school had set up. The main thing was that she really hadn't thought too much about it after that rush of energy just now. The power of Wang Ling's Peachwood branch, reflect on myself 3 times a day, was too strong, and in that split second, she and Wang Ming had fallen into a path that was hard to turn back from, and all they could think about was apologizing. "It's all right, Sister Factor. If you and Brother Ming can make up, that's really good," Lotus Sun replied. I'm sorry, it's my fault." Zhai didn't know what to do. Come to think of it, this could also be considered an undercover mission. It was very different from the kind of life-and-death special forces operation she had carried out before, and, for a moment, Zhai really didn't have any ideas on how to deal with the situation in front of her. Lotus Sun realized that Zhai Yin was in fact a straight woman who was straightforward and didn't like to beat around the bush. She felt that this was probably one of the main reasons why Wang Ming liked Zhai Yin. "Sister Factor, it's good that you can relax a little. Follow my instructions from now on. Then what should I do next? I think you should let go of Brother Little Ming first." Lotus Sun gave an awkward but polite smile. After saying this, Zhai Yin and Wang Ming reacted like birds startled by the mere twang of a bough. Lotus Sun couldn't help laughing in her heart. The quarrel had been sudden, and they had made up just as quickly. Was this what it felt like to be lovers? Lotus Sun was happy for the two of them, but at the same time, she was a little envious. Wang Ling watched this scene from a distance, his face as unadorned as ever, devoid of any emotion. He couldn't see any emotion. The peach tree branch's self-reflection 3 times a day power had been the lubricant for the two of them to reconcile. But when it came down to it, Wang Ming and Zhai Yin actually didn't want to quarrel. That was why they had made up so quickly. According to Jinka's explanation, it was said that the fiercer the quarrel, the stronger the effect of self-reflection 3 times a day. If Wang Ming and Zhai Yin had really quarreled to the point where they would have had a fight, at that time, the two of them probably wouldn't have just hugged each other in front of the treehouse. Instead, they would have directly knelt down and kowtowed to each other. At this thought, Wang Ling couldn't help trembling. This scene was too strange. Kowtowing to each other, wasn't that like bowing to heaven and earth? There was a turbulent undercurrent in this venue now. Wang Ling felt that if he used his peach tree branch in the Magic Treasure exhibition later, when this self-reflection 3 times a day power spread throughout the entire venue, it would probably be a very exciting scene. While he was pondering this, Sun Shan Keed walked to the front of the venue with a glass of grape juice. He gave his swept-back hair a simple stroke to confirm that his hair gel hadn't fallen off. Then he cleared his throat, put on an old-fashioned expression, and began the next step in a very pretentious broadcast voice. "Sun Shan Keed, everyone, today is an exchange meeting between our 9 paths and upper-class students. At the same time, it is also a celebration for our 9 paths and the newly elected 5-member delegation. Everyone is a young genius who reached the golden core stage at a young age." Saying this, Sun Shan Keed swept Wang Ling a glance. "You're different from those good-for-nothings at the foundation establishment stage. Wang Ling, everyone has cultivated hard for so many years. I'm sure you have some magic treasures you can take out. Today's exchange meeting is also an exhibition of magic treasures." Sun Shan Keed smiled. Then, According to the system's order of drawing lots, the students who have drawn a number will come up and show off their magic treasures. I'm really looking forward to seeing what dazzling treasures our 9 paths and the 5-member representative team can bring out. After saying this, he looked at Wang Ling again. Wang Ling silently ate the crispy noodle snacks in the venue's snack area. It was said that Leek Sasaki had specially arranged for Lon Lon Road to prepare something else. Of all the high-end cultivation food in the venue, Wang Ling felt that this crispy noodle snack was the best. After the system drew a number, the first person to come up on stage very quickly. Although it was a number draw, San Shan Keed had actually arranged the numbers in advance. The first person to come up was one of Sun Shan Keed's henchmen, who was also a student from Area S. This young man carried a huge potted plant with a blue and white porcelain pattern about half a meter in diameter. He carefully walked up the steps and placed it on the ground. The magic treasure he was displaying was unexpectedly similar to Wang Ling's. Although the difference in spirituality between this and the peach tree branch in the Sword King world was too great, at least they had the same idea. Unfortunately, most of the people here had never seen the world before. Even the spirituality of this tiny potted spirit plant was enough to make a lot of people gasp in amazement. This is a 100-year-old purple cherry blossom. Someone recognized the origin of the purple seedling in the potted plant. Cherry blossoms were the island flowers of Sun Island. The so-called 7 days of cherry blossoms referred to the short period of 7 days from when a cherry blossom bloomed to when it withered. And the cherry blossom in this young man's hand was of the highest quality. This was a 100-year-old purple cherry. It was a spirit plant that was qualified to be classified as an auxiliary magic artifact. Even in its seedling state, the purple cherry could condense the spirit energy of heaven and earth, which could accelerate one's cultivation. If this purple cherry was planted in a room, it would be the same as setting up 10 spirit gathering arrays in the room. A 100-year-old purple cherry blossom is 100 years old in its seedling stage alone. After 100 years, the purple cherry blossom will grow overnight and turn into a purple cherry tree that will bloom. Someone exclaimed. The purple cherry blossom would automatically mature on a random day after 100 years. But after the purple cherry blossom bloomed, it would remain for a shorter time than a normal cherry blossom. It would wither after 7 hours, and the fully grown purple cherry tree would quickly wither and turn back into a seed. These fallen purple cherry petals would become nutrients. The seed would receive nutrients that would circulate. Thus, the purple cherry blossom also had another name, reincarnation cherry. There was a poem that said, "Turn into the spring mud to protect the flower." This was the most suitable description for the purple cherry blossom. Purple cherry blossoms were very rare on the market, and purple cherry blossoms that had a certain number of reincarnations were even more pitifully rare. This purple cherry seedling in my hand has already passed 100 years. And this year is the 7th reincarnation of this purple cherry, the young man said proudly. 7-round purple cherry? Many people in the field revealed stunned expressions. It was said that purple cherry blossoms were priceless, and the current market value of this 7-round purple cherry was at least 200 million. I'm sorry, everyone. This isn't anything special. It's a pity that this potted plant is over 130 years old. My dad gave it to me, but I haven't seen it blossom yet. The owner of the purple cherry, Sakai Toyonian, rubbed his head and smiled embarrassedly. Our friends from number 60 High, who came all the way from abroad, are also here today. There are too many eyes. I'm sure that my 7-round purple cherry pot is even more embarrassed. Saying this, Sakai Toyonian also glanced at Wang Ling like Moriyama Kid had done earlier. Then he snorted. They say that Queen Langsang is a mascot, and purple cherry is actually a symbol of luck. Today, I will make a small bet. If my disappointing purple cherry blossoms can blossom today, then I will make a bet with you. If my disappointing purple cherry can blossom today, I'll give it to Queen Langsang as a gift. Wang Ling sighed silently in his heart. What was the point? He wasn't a junk collector. Chapter 1556. In the hearts of all the natives of Sun Island, cherry blossoms were a symbol of holiness and beauty. Naturally, their status was extraordinary. Even ordinary cherry blossoms would inspire respect in the hearts of the people here. Not to mention the seven-wheel purple cherry that Sakai Toyota had brought. When he said that he would give the seven-wheel purple cherry to Wang Ling, Sakai Toyota knew that he was being a little presumptuous. After all, he really didn't intend to give the purple cherry away. He had secretly taken this purple cherry out of a glass incubator at home, using the trick of swapping a leopard cat for a crown prince. The one in the glass incubator now was a fake. Teenagers in high school were immature and liked to show off in front of others what others didn't have. Sakai Toyota was naturally no exception. Every time he wanted to show off, he would use a fake to replace the real one and show off the real one. After satisfying his vanity, he would exchange the real purple cherry for the fake one. Of course, if his father found out about this, Sakai Toyota felt that he might not be able to keep his legs. After all, this was a seven-wheel purple cherry, a treasure with a market value of 200 million yuan. Furthermore, it was the kind that would definitely be sold as soon as it was put up for sale, which was even easier than selling a house. Give it to Wang Ling? That was nothing more than a mocking remark. Even if the purple cherry blossoms were going to bloom, it wouldn't be now. Although the purple cherry blossoms would bloom randomly in 100 years, there was a basic rule to it. It was winter now in December, and there were no signs of ordinary cherry blossoms. As a treasure, the purple cherry blossoms naturally wouldn't bloom in winter. Anyone who knew about flowers would understand this point. Jiao Sasaki looked at him with disdain. This Sakai Toyota guy, his words are pretty. He clearly knew that it wouldn't bloom in winter. That's why he did this. The purple cherry is so delicate. How could it bloom? Jiao Sasaki muttered in a low voice as he listened to the endless chatter around him. But as soon as he said this, the purple cherry blossom seedling in the pot suddenly twitched as if it had been awakened by some sound. Jiao Sasaki thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, but the reality in front of everyone forced him to believe what he was seeing. This definitely wasn't just his illusion, because he wasn't the only one who had noticed it. Gradually, people began to talk about it. Look, isn't the seven-wheel purple cherry seedling moving? What? No way. It was December. Such a cold season. I don't think I'm mistaken. It really did move just now. Could it be that we were talking too loudly and were woken up? In an instant, the scene became lively. Although the sprout of the purple cherry blossom only trembled a little before it stopped moving, many people had indeed seen that movement. Could it be the wind? Someone doubted. It's definitely not a problem with the wind. At this moment, Lotus Sun also focused her gaze on the flower sprout. Because she was one with the sword, with mysterious sea, her six senses were infinitely magnified. At the same time, he also obtained a passive skill that allowed him to listen to the sounds of all living things. The sea was an existence that nurtured all living things. Naturally, it could also listen to the voices of all living things. There was no other reason why the girl was stunned. This was because she had not only seen the purple cherry tree move just now, she could even hear the sound of the purple cherry. Lunatic, he moves me around every day for no reason, causing me to have menstrual disorders from time to time. I can't stand it anymore. I want a new master. Classmate Wang Ling, Brother Ming. For a moment, Lotus Sun was at a loss in the small team's independent mental voice channel. After all, not everyone had the ability to communicate with all living things. To most people, Zi Ying was just a support-type magical treasure, a rare spiritual plant. They could understand what the purple cherry was saying, but it was different if they could understand it. Calm down, Miss Rome. You didn't hear wrong. This purple cherry is indeed speaking the cherry language, said Wang Ming. Wang Ming actually also had the ability to listen to all living things. He could adjust his brain waves to the corresponding frequency based on the species of living things, and thus gain the ability to listen to all living things. It was just that the sound wasn't as clear as Wang Ling's and Lotus Sun's. There was no doubt that this was a very irascible purple cherry. Of course, it couldn't be completely blamed for this. After all, Sakai Toyota would move it from time to time and show it off. Even in this cold winter, it couldn't escape this calamity. This made this 7-wheel purple cherry feel deeply dissatisfied with Sakai Toyota. And in such a public setting, when the 7-wheel purple cherry heard that Sakai Toyota was going to make a bet and give it away, it could no longer suppress the anger it had been suppressing for a long time. All living things had spirits. In particular, when 7-wheel purple Ing sensed the faint aura of spirituality emanating from Wang Ling's body, she instantly became even more excited about the idea of changing owners. Sakai Toyota, Evermind Theskandalenlabur. And so, after the purple cherry's final roar that only Wang Ling and the others could hear, in an instant, the purple sapling in the pot grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. I didn't expect it to be a zoo and purple cherry. Wang Ming couldn't help laughing. The 7-wheel purple cherry's growth rate was beyond everyone's imagination. Under everyone's stupefied gazes, countless branches sprouted from the center of the rapidly growing purple cherry tree in all directions. The purple flower buds were like stars on a Christmas tree, instantly decorating the entire cherry blossom tree. Like the most brilliant fireworks in winter, they suddenly bloomed. This, on the stage, Moriyama Keed was stupefied on the spot. Glaring at Sakai Toyota, who was equally stupefied, he scolded in a very low voice, "Sakai, what the hell is going on?" I don't know either." Sakai Toyota himself was about to cry. "President, I think this purple cherry is playing me," because he really had no intention of giving this purple cherry away. In the past, he had never failed to show off his 7-wheel purple cherry in front of others. Who the hell would have thought that this purple cherry would actually bloom in winter, which was out of season? Furthermore, it was after he had raised the flag of giving it away. Wasn't this acting at the level of a best actor? So you're also a 100 Flowers movie queen? However, at the next moment, the most shocking scene occurred. This purple cherry's branch slowly stretched out in Wang Ling's direction. At the head of the branch was a flower bud of twin purple cherry blossoms, which bloomed when it reached Wang Ling. "This is purple cherry's gift." So its back wave sang, "It really is a mascot." At that moment, someone finally couldn't help crying out in surprise. Chapter 1557. The probability of purple cherry blossoms blooming was very low to begin with. What was more, it was a cold winter day, and when the purple cherry blossoms, which symbolized holiness and luck, appeared in front of everyone, everyone's eyes were filled with amazement. Of course, if purple cherry blossoms blooming out of season were a miracle of nature, then this mystical phenomenon known as Purple Ying's gift, which was darting in Wang Ling's direction, was a miracle among miracles. Wang Ling looked around and saw that many of the people around him were dumbfounded as they stared in amazement at this magical scene. A lot of them wanted to take a photo of this miraculous scene with their cell phones. Their faces were full of devotion. There was no doubt that this was a super collision between the mascots. This was mascot plus mascot equals mascot plus. Repost this purple cherry gift photo. Blessed with luck, everything goes according to your wishes, and you pass every test. This pot of 7-wheeled purple cherry blossoms that had suddenly bloomed indoors was too beautiful to behold. Gorgeous purple petals with a magical hue were blown by the breeze outside the treehouse window. They were like petals that had fallen from the sky. This magnificent scene made people feel as if they were instantly placed in an outdoor garden of peach blossoms. The fragrance of the purple cherry blossoms assailed their nostrils. For a moment, everyone was dazzled. Also, so beautiful. This scene was so romantic that for a moment, the men and women at the scene couldn't be any more breathtaking. It was simply a beautiful wallpaper in real life. Every angle was breathtakingly beautiful. The only flaw was the people standing behind the purple cherry blossoms. At that moment, Sunshine Keed and Sakai Toyonian looked a little embarrassed. "Move aside, hurry up, and come down. Don't pollute the picture." Pollute. Sinshan Keed was furious. He wanted to say a few words of rebuttal, but in the end, he didn't have the courage to do so in front of the purple cherry tree. Cherry blossoms were highly respected by the people of Sun Island, especially the seven-wheeled purple cherry blossoms in front of them. If they were disrespectful, they would probably suffer retribution. In fact, after being flustered and exasperated, Sun Shankeed was also reflecting on his behavior. His purpose in convening this exchange meet was to put Wang Ling on the spot, but he hadn't expected that he would be the one to lose face instead. Ziying, who had bloomed out of season, and Ziying's gift, all of this seemed to be the will and gift of the heavens. What Moriyama Maple was thinking about now was whether he had really done something wrong. In that instant, this miraculous vision made him wonder if he should oppose Wang Ling. Was I really wrong? Under the urging of the crowd, Moriyama Keed had no choice but to think while pulling Sakai Toyotomi down from the stage. President, what should I do? Save a child. Sakai Toyotomi was the only one who looked like he was about to cry. Moriyama Keed glanced at Sakai Toyotomi and said, "This is a vow you made yourself. In front of so many people, you better accept it. I will definitely be beaten to death by my father." Sakai Toyotomi's face was full of disappointment, and then he looked at Wang Ling with a face full of anger. This young prodigal son, I'm not finished with him. Guild leader, hurry up and move to the next step. I can't wait to see the scene of him being mocked. However, to Sakai Toyotomi's surprise, after Moriyama Keed, who had originally planned this exchange meet, calmed down, he actually just sighed. There's no next step. Sakai Toyotomi, ? Moriyama Keed. This is God's will. Maybe we really shouldn't have opposed the latter prodigal son. Sakai Toyotomi, in that instant, everything seemed to have started to change. As the instigator of this chess game, Moriyama Keed's quick change of heart caught Sakai Toyotomi off guard. But in fact, this was actually because the peachwood branch in Wang Ling's hand was playing an important role in the self-reflection 3 times a day skill. Wang Ling's body was now covered in single-use Dao talismans, so in theory, there was no possibility of his aura leaking out. Thus, based on Wang Ling's personal judgment, the reason why Ziying had extended her branch to him was most likely because of the peachwood branch in his hand. Wang Ling was a little surprised. A cherry blossom tree falling in love with a peachwood branch. This kind of story always sounded a little fantastical, but if you didn't know better, actually sounded a little romantic. The effect was comparable to Ah Zhen falling in love with Ah Chang. When the two spiritual plants resonated emotionally, the peachwood branch's self-reflection 3 times a day, power directly spread out along with the fragrance of Ziying's flowers. This instantly dispelled Moriyama Keed's insistence on opposing Wang Ling. Sakai Toyotomi was still ridiculing Moriyama Keed's betrayal in his heart. But in the next second, as he smelled the fragrance of the flowers, he suddenly felt a sense of guilt. He started to realize that he actually didn't dare look Wang Ling in the eye, because in front of Wang Ling, Sakai Toyotomi actually felt a sense of shame in his heart. He had obviously been scared to death, afraid that his father would beat him up for giving away this pot of Ziying, which was worth 200 million yuan, for nothing because of this meaningless bet. But now, Sakai Toyotomi suddenly felt that if he didn't fulfill his promise, it would be even scarier than being beaten to death by his own father. As a man of indomitable spirit, Sakai Toyotomi felt that he should take on the responsibilities of a man. Although he didn't know why, there was such a huge change in the way he thought about it. He didn't know why. But this sense of shame and self-reflection was like a fishbone stabbing into Sakai Toyotomi's heart. A few seconds later, Wang Ling saw this scene from a distance. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done this," as he murmured. 2 streams of tears actually fell from the corners of Sakai Toyotomi's eyes. Then, he quickly wiped them away and walked up to everyone again. Once again, he walked in front of everyone. "I admit that my vanity is playing tricks on me, and I actually secretly brought this pot of Ziying out from home." Wang Ling. There were still traces of tears in the corners of Sakai Toyotomi's eyes. "But since I Sakai Toyotomi, have made a promise. Then I will definitely fulfill it. I will give Ziying to Ho Lang-san. Wang Ling. Then, after a moment of silence, thunderous applause rang out. Good job, classmate Sakai. People who keep their promises are the most handsome. On this side, Sakai Toyotomi had just expressed his stance. Moriyama Kid also stepped forward and knelt on the ground in front of everyone to repent. Ho Lang-san, I was wrong. Also, I want to clarify to everyone that a lot of the posts about Ho Lang-san that were published on the internet before were actually made up by me. He raised his head and looked at Wang Ling, his eyes red. Ho Lang-san, is it too late for me to apologize to you now? Wang Ling hadn't expected that the exchange meet aimed at him at noon would be so perfectly resolved by the power of that peach tree branch. This was a turn of events that Wang Ling hadn't expected. Apart from that, there was another thing that Wang Ling hadn't expected. That was everything that had happened at this exchange meet had actually been filmed by Chive Sasaki and Sparrow, and then edited with special effects. They were going to use this video as a promotional video for the Gray Sect. Finally, they had used the previously registered account, 9 Paths and the Gray Sect branch, to directly post it on Bilibili. Ho Lang-san, Rongchan, Brother Air, what do you think about the content of this video? Chive Sasaki obediently sent a preview of the video in a separate chat group that he had set up with Chive Sasaki. The title of the video was Purple Cherry Blossoms Are Actually a Gift to a Member of the Gray Sect, 9 Paths, and the Gray Sect branch. Welcome to join us and share our fortunes. Chive Sasaki handled the entire video very carefully. He only edited Wang Ling's back and didn't mention his name at all. He just used the identity of a member of the Gray Sect. As for the photos that had been distributed online, they had all been blurred by the Great Shielding Spell, and Wang Ling's appearance couldn't be seen at all. Well done, Lotus Sun praised in the group. Lotus Sun praised in the group. Keeping a low profile is the rule of our Gray Church. You handle this very well. Rongchan, you flatter me. Chive Sasaki said, but I actually still haven't figured out why Moriyama Maple and Sakai Toyotomi would apologize in front of so many people. It shouldn't be just because they were reformed after seeing Ziying, right? Oh, what else do you think? Wang Ming asked, amused. Of course, it's also because of Ho Lang-san's charisma. Although we can't see what he looks like in these photos online, that silhouette is very handsome. Staring at the screen, Lotus Sun smiled. Of course. Classmate Wang Ling is the best. Wang Ling, Chive Sasaki. Ah, that's right, Rongchan. I've already received Moriyama Maple and Sakai Toyotomi's applications to join the Gray Sect. Lotus Sun was startled. They want to join the Gray Sect so soon? What's your opinion? Chive Sasaki. I think we still need to observe Moriyama Maple. As for classmate Sakai Toyotomi, I think we should satisfy his wish first. He said that this is his last request before his father beats him to death. Just tell him to be at ease. He won't be beaten to death. As long as he joins the Gray Sect and continues to support classmate Wang Ling, I will definitely protect him. Lotus Sun smiled. Speaking of which, the Gray Sect had become famous online this time. Actually, it was thanks to Sakai Toyotomi's bet that the program's effect had been maximized. In her heart, Lotus Sun was actually a little grateful to Sakai Toyotomi. Now that they had turned enemies into friends, everything else could be discussed. The 7-wheel Purple Sakura had now become 8-wheel Purple Sakura, and its value was a little higher than before. But it was only worth 500 million yuan at most. What does classmate Sakai Toyotomi's family do? Lotus Sun asked in the group. It's a spirit plant farm. We provide materials for a lot of pill companies, Chive Sasaki said. Okay, got it, the girl replied with a smile. At the same time, she already had a plan in mind. That afternoon, when Sakai Toyotomi returned home from school, he felt uneasy. He was worried about his father's scolding. After all, the Purple Sakura was an important asset for the Sakai family. Moreover, it was an ancestral heirloom. Before Sakai Toyotomi had returned home, he had already taken a healing pill with a certain pain and numbing effect to prevent his father's *SS from exploding all over the mountain. He tiptoed in front of the porch, changed in his slippers, and made his way to his bedroom like a thief. In the end, he had only taken 2 steps when a figure appeared behind him. "Sakai, stop right there." A dignified male voice stopped him. It was his father, Akira Sakai. "Father, Sakai Toyotomi was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. "Son, what's wrong?" Akira Sakai went over to support him. "Father, I shouldn't have made a bet with someone else and lost that purple Sakura. You can hit me." Sakai Toyotomi looked at the man in front of him. "Why should I hit you? You sold it well, son." "Huh." Just now, the person in charge of Huaguo Water Curtain Group's business department contacted me. He said that he saw your video online and was very touched to see that you kept your promise. They placed an order for 2 billion yuan for spirit plants. Sakai Toyotomi, ? That worked. Chapter 1558. Sakai Toyoto didn't expect things to take such a turn. Everyone knew that the so-called Grey Church was actually Holang Sang's fan club. Previously, Sakai Toyotani had the thought of joining the Grey Church because of the peach tree branch's self-reflection 3 times a day power. However, Sakai Toyotani didn't expect that he would suddenly think of something. He actually let the family pick up such a huge order for free. At the end of the day, the Sakai family were businessmen. Even if that purple cherry was passed down from generation to generation and was priceless. But in the end, it was only worth 500 million. But now, the Sakai family had obtained an order worth 2 billion in a long-term cooperation. Whether or not this deal was worth, it could be calculated with one's toes. That evening, Sakai's father held a celebration banquet at home. Throughout the celebration banquet, Sakai Toyoto was not only happy, but he was also thinking about this matter. Huaguo Water Curtain Group's actions this time would have been very difficult to explain if not for Miss Sun's help. Then why did Miss Sun do that? Was it because he had fulfilled his promise and decided to join the Grey Church to support Holang Sang? In terms of intuition, Sakai Toyoto felt that Lotus Sun liked Wang Ling. But now, here came the problem. What was going on in front of the treehouse at noon? Eldest Miss Lotus Sun clearly liked Wang Ling. So why was she hugging that Wang Xiao? After Sakai Toyotani sorted out the logic in his mind, he was instantly shocked. Damn, it was a triangular relationship. Son, what's wrong? You are the hero today. Why do you look so pale? Sakai's father looked at the pale Sakai Toyotani and asked with concern. This time, he really didn't expect it. His son, who had always been disappointing and vain. He actually relied on this move to win the favor of Miss Sunday. He had secured such a huge order for the family. Sakai Nara felt gratified and moved by Sakai Toyoto's growth. He had to admit that this time, Sakai was ahead of him. Dad, I'm fine, Sakai Toyotani said. He wiped his sweat with a hot towel handed to him by a servant and asked, Dad, I have something to ask you. Go ahead, Sakai said. If I know something about that Miss Sun, stop. To Sakai's surprise, before he could finish his words, his father interrupted him. Sakai's father took a sip of sake and chuckled. Although our Sakai family's conditions aren't bad, the gap is still very obvious when compared to Huaguo Water Curtain Group. Sometimes, don't judge something based on your own guesses. Otherwise, you will put yourself in a very dangerous situation. As long as it doesn't harm the interests of our Sakai family, it's not bad to be a fool. All you need to know is that Miss Sun has a good impression of that Holang Sang. That's enough. In the future, I'll learn more from Holang Sang and strive to get closer to him. Don't say anything else, don't make wild guesses, and don't talk nonsense. These words were like a bucket of wisdom that instantly woke Sakai Toyotani up. That was right, many things were just wishful thinking on his part. His father was not wrong at all. Right now, he only needed to know that Miss Sun had a good impression of Holang Sang, and that was enough. On the evening of Friday, December 18th, while Sakai Toyotani's family was having a celebration party in the student council office, Leek Sasaki was also summarizing the results of this exchange meeting. First of all, the Rainbow Seven, which was the most difficult to deal with, had been confirmed to have been completely conquered after this exchange meeting. In addition, with Lanlan Lu and Ono Tanaka secretly leading the way. Many people who met the requirements chose to join the Great Church. Even Leek Sasaki didn't expect this. Kyushin and the high school had been divided for so many years due to the competition between the student parties. But because of Holang Sang, they actually became one again. Now, whether it was the Student Council of Kyushin or the original Rainbow Seven, they all belonged to Kyushin and the Great Church. Almost all the S-class students had joined Kyushin and the Great Church. There was no doubt that this was an unprecedented event. The Great Church. They had completely taken over Kyushin. In the future, he would use the name of the Student Council President and the head of Kyushin and the Great Church to apply to the school to abolish the student classification system. This system, which was full of contempt and gave rise to all kinds of school violence and bullying, should have been abolished long ago. Everyone had their own shining points and specialties. Since they were all students of the same school, they should understand the principle that they were bound together for good or ill. Leek Sasaki felt that he had learned this from Wang Ling. Look at number 60 high this time. Wasn't it just a tightly united group with a mascot Wang Ling as their representative? As expected of Holang Sang, Leek Sasaki realized that he was worshipping Wang Ling more and more. Although Holang Sang didn't say anything, every action seemed to have a deeper meaning, and people could learn a lot from him. Apart from this, there were two more things that had come out of this exchange meeting. The first was naturally the promotional video for the account Kyushin and the Great Church branch on Bilibili. The gimmick of the seven-wheeled purple cherry blossoms blooming in an out-of-season manner had attracted a lot of attention and led to a large number of reposts. The number of coins in the video had already exceeded 30,000, and the number of views was close to 1 million. This was undoubtedly explosive data. The second thing was the new decision that Leek Sasaki and Lotus-san had made regarding that pot of 8-wheeled purple cherry blossoms. Because Wang Ling wasn't interested in this thing. Thus, after discussing it with Lotus-san, Leek Sasaki decided to sell off this priceless pot of 8-wheeled purple cherry blossoms in the name of the Great Church, and then donate the money for charity. On Sun Island, there wasn't a single student organization that could donate 500 million yuan in a short period of time. After Leek Sasaki made a public announcement using the account Kyushin and the Great Church branch, it also attracted a lot of attention. There were a lot of media outlets who wanted to interview him, but Leek Sasaki declined all of them. As a literary exchange organization based on students with an attitude, keeping a low profile was the core of the Great Church. As the branch head, he naturally wouldn't make such a mistake lightly. Everything was developing for the better. Back then, Leek Sasaki had decided to bring the Great Church to greater heights on Sun Island. He hadn't expected his goal to achieve so much in such a short period of time. Just as Leek Sasaki was sighing with emotion from his position as president of the student union. At that moment, Sparrow suddenly pushed open the door and came in. "President, bad news." "What is it?" Leek Sasaki asked when he saw Sparrow's flustered expression. Sparrow handed over a document wrapped in red paper. Leek Sasaki's heart trembled when he saw the document. This was a warning letter from the Kyushin and the Academic Affairs Department. A warning letter? It wasn't that Leek Sasaki didn't expect this to happen. However, the moment he saw the warning letter, his heart was still stunned. As expected, it's just like what little bro said. "I can't escape from the school." Leek Sasaki sighed. For so many years, Kyushin and the high school had been ranked at the top of Sun Island. The school leaders had always attributed this result to the competition between Kyushin and the gangs formed by the students. They believed that only constant competition could make their students stronger. Therefore, the leaders of Kyushin and the high school turned a blind eye to the bullying that occurred due to the environment. As long as the school was ranked at the top, they couldn't be bothered to deal with the matters below them. So what if the students had psychological problems? That was because they had poor mental fortitude. In any case, Kyushin had an elimination system. They could just order the students to drop out of school. But now, the competition system of student gangs had been implemented for so many years. Now, it had suddenly been broken by an inexplicable gray sect. Of course, this was something that Kyushin and the school leaders couldn't tolerate. This warning letter was in fact a threat on the surface. There were two main things written in it. The first was to suspend Leek Sasaki from his position as president of the student union. The second was to demand that Leek Sasaki immediately disband the Kyushin and the Gray Sect branch. Otherwise, Leek Sasaki would directly drop out of school. "President, what should we do now?" Sparrow asked with a frown. "Just treat it as waste paper." "We can't mess up," Leek Sasaki said. It was as he had said before. Wang Ming had anticipated this long before this warning letter had been issued. What if Kyushin and the leaders jumped out to oppose the establishment of the Gray Sect branch? The solution to this problem was actually very simple. Leek Sasaki and Wang Ming had already thought it through. That was to pull the leaders into the Gray Sect. Chapter 1559. In Jiu Dao's administration office, a middle-aged man whose head was so smooth that it reflected light said. He was dressed in a well-ironed suit with Jiu Dao's exclusive eye badge on his chest. His mustache and monocle accentuated his elite temperament. On his desk was a business card box with the words, "Yuki Jun-san." "I miscalculated. I didn't expect these kids from number 60 high to be so capable," said Yuki Jun-san. He was the director of Jiu Dao's administration office. Jiu Dao didn't have a vice headmaster position and was the school's overall manager apart from the headmaster. Jiu Dao had never made a mistake in implementing the grading system for so many years, and the school board support for the grading system was unimaginable. It was just that Yuki Jun-san hadn't expected it to be broken by a few foreign exchange students this time. "Do you think the warning letter will work?" In the office, a blond foreign man with blue eyes smiled as he held a glass of red wine. "Don't worry, Mr. Holland. I know very well who has the final say in the board. I won't delay it for long. It's just a literary exchange group set up by students. It's over." Yuki Jun-san smiled confidently. "What on earth is that Ho Longsong's background?" "I don't think this youngster is simple," said Holland. "I think Mr. Holland is overthinking things. In my opinion, that Ho Langsang is just a pawn." Yuki Jun-san frowned. "So a pawn?" "Of course he is," Yuki Jun-san said. "The real organizer behind the scenes is that eldest miss of Huagua Water Curtain Group, Lotus Sunday. Apart from her, who else would have the boldness to directly donate that pot of purple cherry?" "You think she planned it all?" "Only that eldest miss would dare do that. She must have used Ho Longsong's name to set up this organization. On the surface, this organization looks like a fan club for literature lovers. But in fact, it has an ulterior motive. But that eldest miss has an extraordinary background, and Jiu Dao can't openly take action against Huagua Water Curtain Group. So now we have no choice but to erase that Ho Langsang." To be honest, Holland felt that Wimaki Junson's words were not completely unreasonable. But he had the feeling that Wetsuji Junshan was underestimating Wang Ling too much. "Don't worry, Mr. Holland. I've already issued a warning. In addition, in this year's closed-door National University Rankings competition, I will also plan to make our team lose." Yuki Junshan said, "As long as Ho Longsang loses the game, everything will fall apart. I think Mr. Mu is a little too confident." Holland frowned. "I swear on the name of the Lord." Wimaki Jun-san said, "No, I guarantee it in the name of the Dao ancestor. This matter will definitely be resolved smoothly." "In the name of the Dao ancestor?" Although the Eastern cultivation world and the Western cultivation world have different beliefs. However, Dao ancestor seemed to be the greatest deity that the Eastern cultivation world believed in. Holland sighed. "Fine. Since Mr. Yuki is so confident, I'll have to go. In that case, I believe that Mr. Yuki will be able to handle this matter. The actual control of the 9 paths must be firmly in our hands." "I understand, Mr. Holland." Wimaki Junshan nodded solemnly. Then the two of them cupped their fists and saluted each other. Wimaki Junshan, "Kyushu, we will never yield. With the Dao ancestors' blessing, everything will be fine." Elsewhere, in the student union office, Leek Sasaki put the old and crumpled warning letter on the table. He had dug it out of the trash can. The main thing was to show the reinforcements he had asked for. And this reinforcements was none other than Zhou Xiang, the language teacher who had worked with Sparrow to repair Kyushu's secret room. Student Leaks Sasaki, I'm afraid I won't be able to help you with this. Zhou Xiang looked at the warning letter in his hand and couldn't help sighing. Kyushu has always been xenophobic, and I'm a foreign teacher, so I don't have much say in this. The only reason I can get a high salary here is because I'm good at teaching. Leaks Sasaki crossed his fingers and rested his chin on his hand. I didn't ask Mr. Zhou Xiang to help me get the Academic Affairs Office to revoke the warning letter. That's impossible. Zhou Xiang laughed when he heard this. So it's not about that. I know that Mr. Zhou has a hard time at the school, Leaks Sasaki said. Zhou Xiang nodded and said, a warning letter is a very serious punishment. You're actually related to the Star Takers. But the Academic Affairs Office wouldn't dare to issue a warning letter like this. So I think this is most likely the school's board of directors. The board of directors is indeed troublesome. Sparrow frowned when she heard this. Things were starting to get troublesome. I remember that Kyushu is a school run by the Kyushu family. The board of directors should be able to handle this better. And my aunt is the sixth wife of the Kyushu family, Leaks Sasaki said. You might not know this, but Kyushu and this school are actually the property of the third wife of the Kyushu family. Zhou Xiang said, because of her low education level, she has always wanted to be the principal. Back then, in order to pursue her, the old man of the Kyushu family helped her open up Kyushu. But the third wife has no experience in management, so she found some foreign management team to help manage it. Then over time, the actual controlling shares of Kyushu and the board of directors were controlled by those foreign teams. These words made Leaks Sasaki fall into deep thought. It sounded like the situation was indeed much worse than it actually was, but to Leaks Sasaki, he had no way out. Even if it's a difficult bone to chew. But this is also the agreement between me, Homo Lang, and Rong Chan. Kyushu and the Great Church branch must exist. The grading system of Kyushu must also be abolished. Leaks Sasaki said firmly. But it's useless for you to tell me this. Zhou Xiang spread his hands helplessly. At this moment, Leaks Sasaki suddenly asked, Mr. Zhou can't speak in the Academic Affairs Office, but what about the other teachers? Well, Zhou Xiang rubbed his chin. My popularity is actually not bad. There are many foreign teachers in Kyushu, and I actually have a good relationship with the foreign teachers. That's good. Leaks Sasaki became excited. What's good? Zhou Xiang didn't understand. Join the church. Mr. Zhou, you can be our ambassador and pull these teachers into the Great Church. This. Zhou Xiang was stunned. This matter. I'm afraid I can't do it. I have a condition that Mr. Zhou can't refuse. Leaks Sasaki looked at Zhou Xiang seriously. Student Zhou Z. His leg. Rong Chan said she can cure it. Chapter 1560. But to everyone's surprise, news of Chive Sasaki's expulsion spread like wildfire within Kyushu and the school. Moreover, the trend was very wrong. Almost all the public opinion was on Chive Sasaki's side. As the president of the student council, who was enthusiastic, positive, had excellent grades, and was willing to provide quality service to the students, he had been threatened with expulsion by the school's academic affairs department just because he joined a literary exchange club. No matter how you looked at it, it seemed like the academic affairs department was the problem. The condemnation of this matter on the internet almost fermented overnight. What's the use of a school that doesn't respect its students, no matter how good his grades are? Little Chive is so cute. When I graduated from Kyushu, I elected him to be the president of the student council. Well, why do you have to expel him? Aren't you cutting Chive? You don't understand? Kyushu is now a foreign school, and foreign cultivation educational institutions actually control it. The Kyugyu family actually has no control at all. Kyushu is rotten to the core, rotten to the core. That was the main point of the online discussion. When Kyushu and Wemaki Junzan saw this overwhelming tide of public opinion, they trembled with anger and wondered what was wrong with the world. It wasn't easy to create such a wave of condemnation overnight. Among them, There were two main factors that added fuel to the fire. On one hand, Lotus Sun and Chive Sasaki had planned to organize Grey Church members to help Chive Sasaki guide online public opinion. On the other hand, teacher Zhou Xiang, who had accepted the conditions, had set the pace among the teachers of Kyushu. With both the students and the teachers working in tandem, the matter quickly spread. Yes, Wamaki Junzan had miscalculated once again. He had underestimated the overall strength of the Grey Church. After the Rainbow Seven Gang was taken down, the entire student council, as well as all the students who were dissatisfied with Kyushu and the grading system, had joined Kyushu and the Grey Church branches as long as they had excellent grades in language. Furthermore, the promotional video on Bilibili had added fuel to the fire. For a moment, many people were very interested in this student organization that had been established with the initial purpose of literary exchange. Sometimes, as long as public opinion was stirred up, it was very easy to follow the trend. There had always been a lot of people on the internet who would go along with the flow. Since everyone had agreed, then there was nothing wrong with agreeing with them. If everyone was cursing the same person or the same thing, then it wouldn't hurt to go along with the flow and stimulate Zhu and's bloodline. On Saturday, December 19th, Sun Island's closed-door National High School ranking tournament had yet to officially begin. Zhu Dao and the student union's office, Leek Sasaki, was extremely busy. Since early in the morning, Chiba Sasaki and Sparrow had not left the office. This was because more and more people were applying to join the Grey Church. There were students and teachers from other schools who handed over their report cards. For a moment, the Nine Paths and the Grey Church's branch were in an uproar again. In just a few days, the Nine Paths and the Grey Church's branch had grown from nothing to their current strength. This was something that Chive Sasaki had never expected. Faced with the increasing number of Grey Church disciples, Leek Sasaki naturally felt the pressure mounting. In the last few days, sect leader Lotus Sun had been on his side, giving him pointers. When the people from number 60 high went back next week, Leek Sasaki started to feel inexplicably agitated and anxious. In fact, Wang Ling had already anticipated this. After these days of comprehensive inspection of chives, Wang Ling felt that Leek Sasaki could be considered a person of good character. He didn't have anything to offer, so he enchanted something and had Lotus Sun give it to Chive Sasaki in her name as a gift. So that day, Chive Sasaki was in his office looking at the densely packed roster of believers on the computer, and his hair was about to fall. Lotus Sun brought Wang Ling's enchanted gift to the office. "This is Ryu-chan's for me." Chive Sasaki revealed an expression of disbelief. "You've worked hard these days. It was just a small token of appreciation." This was a memory pillowcase. It matched all pillows and was very elastic. Sleeping on it will help you clear your mind. "Wow, this material feels very comfortable. It must be very expensive," Chive Sasaki exclaimed. "Actually, it's not that big of a deal, as long as you like it." Lotus Sun smiled awkwardly. Of course, she knew that the pillowcase was excellent. If Wang Ling hadn't personally asked her to deliver it, how would she have dared claim credit? This was something that classmate Wang Ling had personally enchanted. A casual touch was a priceless treasure. How many people in the world could only wish for it? Is Holang Sang-san going to the competition with the teams soon? Yes, he's leaving right away. The competition starts at 3 o'clock this afternoon. I have to hurry up and get ready. Lotus Sun smiled. "Okay, Ryu-chan. Do your best, Ryu-chan. I'll watch the live broadcast and give you gifts." Lotus Sun nodded, then said goodbye to Chive Sasaki. "Farewell, cult leader." Watching the girl's receding figure, Chive Sasaki held the pillowcase in his hands and bowed to Lotus Sun with extreme excitement. For some reason, Lotus Sun felt like she was being possessed by Zhang Wuji, the cult master of the Ming cult. But their Grey cult was clearly just a literary exchange club. The closed-door competition for the National High School ranking on Sun Island was about to begin. Chive Sasaki was busy roping in newcomers. Wang Ling was waiting to win the championship, while Ajua and Kamiya Ryoko were also busily trying to treat Zhou Xiang's son's leg. This time, Zhou Xiang was leading the team of teachers in Kua High School, and the matter of Yumiya Junshan would probably be found out very soon. He had chosen this high-paying job to work abroad to pay for his son's leg treatment. Now that the matter of treating his son's leg had been settled, there was no harm in Zhou Xiang throwing caution to the wind. Besides, he had already put up with Yumiya Junshan for a long time. If it wasn't for his son's sake every time, Zhou Xiang felt that he might have fought Yumiya Junshan to the death. This is the place. Ajua drove Kamiya Ryoko to Zhou Xiang's house. This was an old-fashioned cultivation residential building that had been around for a very long time. Although it was in Songhai City, it was very rare to see this kind of courtyard building in the city center. Kamiya Ryoko was wearing a black cloak and had changed her appearance. This was because Lotus Sun was now taking her place in the competition. In order to coordinate with Lotus Sun's performance, Kamiya Ryoko had simply asked for leave from school and hadn't gone to school in the last few days. What Kamiya Ryoko hadn't expected the most was she had actually been living at Ajua's house these days. Ajua had indeed duped her into going over, saying that she had to fulfill her duty and responsibility as a bodyguard, although the man next to her hadn't done anything to her. But Kamiya Ryoko still had a very strange feeling in her heart. "Excuse me, is classmate Josie home?" In front of the courtyard, Ajua knocked on the very old-fashioned riveted door. The red paint had already peeled off, and it looked old and wrinkled. Ajua gently pushed the door and found that the latch on the inside was loose and not completely locked. "Is anyone home?" he asked as he and Kamiya Ryoko entered the courtyard. Before coming to see Josie, Ajua had in fact imagined a lot of scenarios. He had thought that he would see a very dejected teenager pushing a wheelchair out, dragging a frail body. In the end, not long after he said that, he heard a hearty shout from inside. "Coming, coming." On the eaves, the legless teenager was standing upside down, using his arms instead of his feet to skillfully support his body. He leaped over the eaves and vaulted over the walls, then did a 360-degree turn in the air. Finally, with a bang, his head smashed into the ground. "Classmate Joe, it's not the new year yet. There's no need to be so formal." Ajua gave an awkward but polite smile. "Does it hurt?" Kamiya Ryoko wanted to help him up. In the end, Josie scratched his head and propped himself up. It's fine. I'm a spirited little fellow." Odd, spirited little fellow. Apart from losing his legs, there was indeed something wrong with his mind. Chapter 1561. It was a very old-fashioned house, but after careful observation, Ajua and Kamiya Ryoko found that the layout inside was very orderly. The flowers and grasses in the courtyard were growing very well. Each of them bloomed with their own fragrance, displaying their own beauty. It was obvious that they had been carefully taken care of on a daily basis. "Do you usually take care of these flowers and plants?" Looking at the blooming flowers, Ajua couldn't help asking. "Yeah, it's also the mission my dad gave me before he went to Sun Island. He only has these hobbies. For my sake, he is so busy outside. I don't dare to raise his thing to death. You and your father are so close." Ajua sighed. "I thought you would hate your father." "Why should I hate my father?" Josie laughed. "It wasn't his fault that my leg was broken. It was just an accident. I've seen how he's been running around for my leg all these years." Saying this, Josie suddenly turned around to look at him. "That's right. I want to ask, are you the real Ajua?" Ajua was amused by this question. "Of course I'm the real Ajua, otherwise what?" "No, nothing." Josie quickly turned his body around and continued to use his arms and palms to replace his legs, leading them to the front of the main hall. Before entering the door, Josie's body paused. "Wait for me. Don't go in yet. Come in only when I tell you to. You're a man. What other shameful things do you have?" Ajua suddenly smiled again. Before coming here, he had actually already pretty much figured out Josie's situation. He also knew what it was that made Josie nervous and wanted to hide. Josie's face turned red, and he couldn't help but take a few steps back. In fact, he was Ajua's little fan, the kind who had admired him for a long time. Ever since he had lost his legs in an accident when he was very young, Ajua's story had become his only hope. Now that the main body had appeared, he was naturally filled with emotions. Zhou Zi never dreamed that Ajua would actually pay attention to him. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. We're all men. Squatting down, Ajua pinched Zhou Zi's dark face. Sure enough, the little fellow's face was as thick as he had imagined. Looking at this scene, Ryoko Kamiya felt a little upset. However, when he thought of Zhou Zi's current situation, he endured it all. At the same time, she felt childish for her own thoughts. Zhou Zi was a little fan of his, which made people feel that Zhou Zi was very cute. Most importantly, Zhou Zi was a man. Just now, she actually felt annoyed over a boy. At this moment, Ryoko Kamiya had mixed feelings. She didn't think that she was jealous, but that she was sick. It was all her fault for being too close to Ajua these days, which had led her astray. Then come in, but don't laugh at me. After careful consideration, Zhou Zi felt that what Ajua said made sense, so he boldly stepped aside. When he pushed open the door and entered the living room of the Zhou family mansion, he was instantly dumbfounded by the scene in front of him. The entire living room, including the right half of the wall, was filled with meticulously edited newspapers, all of which were related to him. Ajua had thought that the oldest news would have started 6 years ago, when he had defeated the sky-swallowing toad. But the truth was that Zhou Zi had been paying attention to him for even longer than that. Zhou Zi had even paid attention to the news of Ajua's second-class and third-class merits in the army. On the right side of the wall were many posters about Ajua, including promotional posters, magazine covers, and posters of some of the movies he had starred in after he had become famous. Of course, the most outrageous thing wasn't what was on the left and right walls. It was the offering table at the very front of the main hall. The person on the offering table was none other than Ajua's gold-plated cultivation hero commemorative figurine. 3 electronic candles were placed on the left and right sides of the figurine. In front of the figurine was a full spread of tributes, including peaches, bananas, and a whole fragrant braised pig's head. Looking at this scene, Ryoko Kamiya tried hard not to laugh out loud. Ajua being worshipped at home was something she had never expected at all. Are you happy? Touched? Ryoko Kamiya really wanted to ask Ajua this question now. As an outsider, she naturally only felt that it was funny. But Ajua was different. To be honest, when he saw all this, his heart was deeply moved. A child who had lost both his legs at a very young age hadn't been defeated by such an ordeal, but had instead been able to live bravely and optimistically. In some sense, Ajua felt that Zhou Zi possessed a kind of courage that ordinary children didn't have. Just like 6 years ago, he had flashed his spirit sword and charged to the front line, even though he knew he was no match for Ajua. Ajua thought he would laugh out loud, but the truth was that after seeing all this, apart from being moved, he felt even more respect. He took a few steps forward, picked up the incense sticks on the table, and lit them with spirit flames from his fingertips. Then he bowed to his figurine and firmly inserted the 3 incense sticks into the censer with boundless emotion in his heart. Ryoko Kamiya and Zhou Zi couldn't take it anymore at this scene. Both of them burst into laughter at the same time. Ajua rolled his eyes and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're telling me not to laugh, but you're smiling so brightly yourself. Zhou Zi wiped his tears. Well, Mr. Zhua, you can't blame me. I respect you very much, but how can you worship yourself? This is too funny. Ajua picked up Zhou Zi with one hand and straightened him out like he was a little chick, then directly carried him on his shoulder. Zhou Zi's face instantly turned red. Mr. Zhua, put me down. Ajua neatly put the youngster on his shoulder down on a nearby chair. Then he and Ryoko each found a chair to sit down in. Zhou Zi still hadn't reacted to the fact that the person he had admired for a long time had suddenly carried him and placed him on a chair. He didn't lack concern, because he knew that in this world, his father was the person who cared about him the most. Zhou Xiang worked abroad all year round, but the hearts of father and son had always been connected. He worked hard to make himself obedient and strong. And even if he didn't have legs, he still lived a positive life. But the moment Adjoa picked him up just now, he suddenly felt that he had a very powerful backer behind him. Mr. Zhou's emotions were complicated and at the same time very excited, and he didn't know what to say. At that moment, Adjoa stared at Zhou and smiled. "Don't call me Mr. Zhou. It's treating me like an outsider. You're a student of Sword God Academy, so I'm also your senior." Senior, when I was studying at number 60 High, I was lucky enough to study at Sword God Academy for a while. But that was a long time ago. Adjoa said, "Just call me senior from now on." "I see." Zhou's eyes lit up and his face was full of joy. "Okay, senior. Next, let's talk about her legs," Adjoa said. "My dad said that you can install the latest smart prosthetic legs on me. Is that true? Those things are very expensive. I heard that they cost 100 million each. Smart prosthetic legs worth hundreds of millions." Adjoa raised his eyebrows and sighed. "I think your father might have misunderstood something. Like I said, my dad is overthinking things. 100 million for a leg. How could it be mine?" Zhou smiled bitterly. "No, classmate Zhou, why don't you understand?" At that moment, Adjoa said, "Smart prosthetic legs are good, but they actually aren't as good as real legs. Don't tell me it's a real leg transplant." Zhou was startled. "But the doctor already said that my legs are past the best transplant period. A transplant is too low. I can also do this surgery. If you want a transplant, I can help you become ergot. It's fine even if you have a few more legs. What I'm talking to you about now isn't prosthetic legs, let alone a so-called transplant." At that moment, Adjoa looked up at the youngster in front of him with a serious expression on his face. "I'm talking about growing your legs back. Do you see the flowers and plants in your yard? This broken leg can also be planted." Chapter 1562. Replanting a Broken Leg. This was an extremely brilliant technique. Of course, this wasn't a technique that cultivators on Earth currently possessed. At the moment, the replanting technique on Earth still used substitute materials, such as spirit lotus roots. But this was for cultivators whose bodies had been severely damaged. They used spirit lotus roots to create a fake body and then grafted a soul into it. This was an extremely brilliant surgery, but because the medical costs were particularly high, it wasn't something that ordinary cultivators could afford. This was a project for the rich. The advantages and disadvantages of a lotus root body were very obvious. Because it was too brittle, people who had a lotus root body were especially vulnerable to damage and had to avoid a lot of strenuous exercise. Even flying on a sword was risky because lotus root people were very light, and if they flew too fast, they could easily flip over. If even flying a sword was a problem, there was no need to talk about mass movement. So in the final analysis, whether it was substitute materials or real human tissue transplanted from someone else's body, it was still far less useful than the original flesh on the body. At the cultivation level on Earth, leg planting technology still wasn't mature enough, but on Divine Tao Star, it was already very mature. Ever since Wang Ling had intimidated the leaders of Divine Tao Star's major families, the 10 major families of Divine Tao Star had been too eager to curry favor with them. Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi, this young couple, had already become envoys for communication between Battle Sect and Divine Tao Star. Wang Ling had only just set out the task, but Wang Zhen and Lu Qingyi had already gotten their hands on the leg planting method. It actually wasn't too different from basic planting. They just needed to make a hole in the broken part, stuff the seed in, and finally sew it back together. All that was left was to bask the leg in the sun every day and wait for it to grow back. Of course, in order to ensure that the broken leg could grow back smoothly, the body also needed to be nourished. This process was equivalent to fertilizing, but in fact there was no need to soak the broken part in fertilizer. That would be too heavy a taste. The leg just needed to keep eating to replenish its nutrients. After seeing Zhou's condition this time, Adjoa had actually felt very gratified. He had been more worried that the young man would have a heavy psychological burden. Now that he saw Zhou's cheerful and optimistic appearance, This concern was clearly dispelled. On the other hand, he also had to observe Zhou Zi's specific injuries. The elbow's leg was exactly a third of the thigh. In other words, a part of the thigh was still there, and not the lower half of the body had completely disappeared. Otherwise, he would have to plant the middle leg, which would be more troublesome. Your condition is fine. I think that as long as you take good care of yourself, you'll definitely be able to grow 2 long legs based on your head-to-body ratio, Ajwa said as he cupped his chin. Will it really work? Zhou Zi was skeptical. You have to be confident, student Zhou. Ajwa encouraged her. The implantation surgery was actually very fast. However, in order to ensure that Zhou Zi's body's nutrition could be supplemented and taken care of during the implantation period, Zhou Zi had to be carefully taken care of. Ajwa decided to bring Zhou Zi home to help him recuperate. This was the task Wang Ling had given him, and, as his disciple, he had to complete it. Most importantly, although Zhou Zi was already 16 years old, he had a baby face and looked like a child. Considering the age difference, Ajwa actually felt like an old father when he made this decision. Senior Zhua wants me to go to Senior's house? After learning of Ajwa's decision, Zhou Zi looked very surprised. But what about the flowers and plants in my courtyard? I have a friend called Immortal Toya. He'll be the one to carry out the planting operation this time, and his 2 disciples will take care of your flowers and plants. Ajwa smiled. His 2 disciples usually take care of the flowers on an entire island. The few pots in your courtyard are too easy for them. But won't this be too troublesome? Zhou Zi frowned. He was as clear as a mirror in his heart. He was well aware that what he was doing would cause Ajwa a lot of trouble. Although Zhou Zi had a broken leg, he was still very good at socializing because of his cheerful personality. Zhou Zi had already learned to read people's expressions at a very young age. The reason he was apprehensive wasn't just because he didn't want to trouble Ajwa. More importantly, he felt that the girl behind Ajwa right now would swallow him whole. After pondering for a long while, Zhou Zi looked up at Ajwa and changed the way he addressed him. Brother Zhua. That's good. It sounds more intimate than senior. Ajwa nodded in satisfaction. He crouched down and looked patiently at the youngster in front of him. Whatever you think, you can tell me. I know Brother Zhua is doing this for my own good, but it's really inconvenient for me to go over. Zhou Zi buried his head, as if he had been holding it in for a long time. In the end, he suddenly raised his head and summoned up his courage to say, because I don't want to be the third wheel. Third wheel? Sister-in-law will mind if I go over and live there, right? Zhou Zi looked at Ajwa. After he said this, Ajwa burst out laughing on the spot. In contrast, Ryoko Kamiya, who was behind him, clearly hadn't expected Zhou Zi to suddenly bring this up, and she stamped her foot shyly on the spot. Who's your sister-in-law? Then, she quickly left the living room with a red face. Ajwa was overjoyed. The more he looked at Zhou Zi, the more he liked him. This young man had a bright future ahead of him. He knew how to read people's expressions, but there was one thing he didn't quite understand. So he asked, I don't think I've ever told you that she's your sister-in-law, right? Why would you think that? So she isn't. It seems I was rude. I'm sorry, Brother Zhua. Zhou Zi scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. I'm actually very sensitive to smell. I actually sensed it the moment you walked in. The shampoo and body wash you use all smell the same. This means that you two are living together. Then if she's living together, she could be my little sister, right? Zhua laughed. No, it can't be your little sister. Sister-in-law clearly looks at Brother Zhua differently. What little sister would get jealous? Zhou Zi said in a low voice. You think she's jealous? A little, Zhou Zi nodded. But is she sister-in-law or not? Ajwa rubbed Zhou Zi's head and smiled coldly. Don't worry, she will be soon. As for you, your first task now is to go back with me and plant legs. But there are no buts. There are no paths in this world, but once you have legs, you'll have a path. And once you have a path and legs, you'll be able to widen your path. Ajwa's logic was so strong that Zhou Zi couldn't refute it. Chapter 1563. On the way back, Kiyomiya Ryoko sat in the front passenger seat and looked at the excited Josie through the rearview mirror from time to time. She was keenly aware that Josie's eyes had been glued to Audrey ever since he got in the car. Didn't you always think the front passenger seat wasn't spacious enough? Why are you sitting next to me? Not long after they set off, Audrey suddenly laughed. He looked straight ahead and only glanced out of the corner of his eye at the girl next to him, who had her arms crossed and her head slightly raised like a black swan. I'll sit wherever I want. Kiyomiya Ryoko turned to look out the window, but her eyes never left Josie in the back seat through the reflection in the window, as if she was deep in thought. To be honest, she didn't dislike Josie. Even after meeting Josie for the first time, he felt great admiration for Josie's courage to smile at life. But for some reason, she felt uncomfortable when she saw Josie's gaze on Audrey. She was very clear that that gaze was definitely not a gaze of love, but a pure admiration for her idol. But no matter how much she persuaded herself, Kiyomiya Ryoko still felt as if her heart was blocked and she couldn't calm down. Ever since she had hired Audrey as a bodyguard, she found that she had become more and more abnormal. With both hands on the steering wheel, Audrey stared at the sulking girl next to him and couldn't help laughing in his heart. Ryoko was too cute. This girl couldn't hide her temper. She thought she was very mature, but in fact, her inner thoughts were written all over her face. Audrey had in fact already decided on the idea of bringing Josie back. On one hand, it was to better complete his task, and on the other hand, it was to provoke Kiyomiya Ryoko. He had already gotten a good grasp of the girl's temper recently. If Josie had been a girl, she would probably have already started acting weird. It was precisely because Josie was a boy, and a disabled one at that this girl couldn't say a word now. Even if she was a little jealous, she could still sulk on her own. She was actually jealous of a boy, and a disabled one at that. For Kiyomiya Ryoko, it was too unbecoming of her to say this out loud. I'll cook some home cooking tonight. After driving for a while, Audrey gripped the steering wheel and tried to break the deadlock in the car. Josie knew how to read people's expressions, and he also knew that Ryoko Kamiya was actually unhappy. However, given the current situation, he didn't dare to say anything. Obediently keeping his mouth shut was the best choice. There was no way Audrey would let Josie be embarrassed alone. It was his duty to lighten the mood. Z, do you have any favorite dishes? Audrey asked. I'm not a picky eater. I'll just eat with big brother and sister-in-law. Josie was a little embarrassed. After he said this, he instinctively wanted to see Kiyomiya Ryoko's reaction, but strangely, the girl in the passenger seat didn't move at all. Previously, when the girl was at his house, she had tried her best to deny this relationship. In the end, there was a feeling of tacit agreement. Out of the corner of his eye, Audrey glanced at the girl, who looked like she had already fallen asleep, and curled his lips. Your sister-in-law is asleep. As soon as she said that, Ryoko's lips twitched. Oh, sister-in-law has fallen asleep. Josie's expression of sudden realization was extremely exaggerated. He couldn't help snickering in his heart. This Josie was smarter than he had imagined. He had actually already guessed that Ryoko was faking her sleep. But he didn't directly expose him, and, at Audrey's hint with his eyes, continued to cooperate with the rest of the performance. Z, just tell me what you want to eat. In any case, your sister-in-law is asleep and won't mind, Audrey said in a low voice. Josie understood and hurriedly lowered his voice as well. The current situation between the two of them really looked like they were taking care of the sleeping Kiyomiya Ryoko, so they lowered their voices. In fact, their voices weren't too low. There wasn't much space in the car, so Ryoko could still hear them clearly. Then what does sister-in-law usually like to eat? Your sister-in-law is afraid of getting fat and likes to eat bland food. But she's actually afraid that if she eats too bland, she won't be able to get enough nutrition. Audrey looked at Ryoko's flat mouse pad and said, actually, her favorite dishes are spicy chicken and duck blood curd. I see. Josie smiled, his eyes full of envy. Ah, that's great. Z, Have you ever had a girlfriend? Ajwa asked. I'm a disabled person. How could anyone like me? Josie shrugged helplessly. The teachers and classmates at school take good care of me, at least on the surface. But there are always discussions in private. What do they say about you? They say how a disabled person like me could get into Sword God Academy. It's probably something along those lines. You're not angry. There's nothing to be angry about. Josie said, sometimes, a lot of people don't want to hear your excuses. They just want to enjoy the pleasure of arguing with you. That makes sense. Ajwa was secretly surprised by Josie's maturity. Your sister-in-law also often argues with me at home. You two are different. Husband and wife quarrel at the head of the bed and reconcile at the end. The more you argue, the better your relationship, Josie said. As he spoke, he was observing Ryoko's expression the whole time. In this short conversation, he kept calling her sister-in-law, and the corners of Ryoko's mouth and eyes twitched nonstop as he kept calling her sister-in-law. Even Josie started to become curious about how much longer Ryoko could hang on. But as the saying went, you could never wake up a person who was pretending to be asleep. As long as Ryoko didn't want to wake up, it wouldn't matter how excessive their next topic was. If she woke up and retorted now, how awkward would that be? Ajwa was clearly aware of this, and he started to step on the accelerator and abruptly increase the speed. Z, he suddenly said at that moment. Brother Zhuo, what is it? Josie understood and asked cooperatively. The two of them immediately echoed each other and began to sing the same tune. I was just thinking, if I had married a little earlier, will my son be about the same age as you? Puffed. Josie couldn't help laughing on the spot. Brother Zhuo wants to be my father? Godfather? Godfather or whatever, that's too much. I think I can be your Shifu. A teacher for a day is a father for life. Then I'll be your son from now on. If you were my son, then the one next to you wouldn't be your sister-in-law right now. We're now a standard family of 3 in this car. A family of 3. I get it. Josie bowed on the spot to Ryoko in the front passenger seat. Greetings, esteemed mother. At that moment, Ryoko suddenly opened her eyes and clenched her 2 little fists tightly as she shouted, Who's your esteemed mother? Her. I can't take it anymore. What the hell is this? The more she said, the more outrageous it became. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.